bespoke radio for the masses.
Headline edition, July 8, 1947. The Army Air Forces has announced that a flying disc has been found and is now in the possession of the Army.
If the game is rigged, change the game. Game changer.
I occasionally think how quickly our differences worldwide would vanish if we were facing an alien threat from outside this world.
This is Fade to Black with your host, Jimmy Church, on the Game Changer Radio Network and KGRA, the Global Radio Alliance.
I need your help to get to the year 1985.
You're listening to Fade to Black with Jimmy Church on the Game Changer Network.
Good evening. This is Fade to Black, bespoke radio for the masses. Today is Wednesday, July 6th, 189 days into the new year, 177 days left. We are live from a bunker somewhere in downtown Burbank, California. I would like to welcome everybody listening all around the world, all across the United States. Hither and thither, to and fro, back and forth, up and down, east and west, north and south, far and near. It's Fade to Black for KJCR, the Game Changer Network, and KGRA, the Planet. I am your so humble host, Jimmy Church. What is cracking, everybody? Tonight, we have back with us the one and only Joshua P. Warren. He's going to be here to talk about his latest book, which is Using the Force, but it's about the laws of attraction. We're also going to talk about his latest research and what is going on out there in the world of the paranormal. And he has got an amazing video over at his website, www.joshuapwarren.com. of Homeland Security footage of something over Puerto Rico. And it's a crazy video. And we'll post that, and we will discuss that tonight, too, as well. It's amazing. Tomorrow night, another Fader Night, open lines with John Rappaport. He's going to be here with his No More Fake Newsroom. Of course, the call-in number, as always, is 323-825-5045. We'll open up the phone lines in a couple of hours. You can follow us on Twitter at JChurchRadio, Facebook, YouTube. You know what to do. Just go to the website, click, follow, like, and subscribe. You can also email throughout the show tonight, Jimmy@JimmyChurchRadio.com. Just make the email good. It will get past our crack team here, and it will make its way in here to me, and I'll check it out. And I'm listening in the cans here. I have got fans going on. I will have to turn these off somehow because I can hear them in the can. So that's what's going on. I have a computer fan at my feet that I turned on high that blows on a bunch of the computers that are here, and I can hear it in the cans. Okay, so just ignore it. That's what that is, if you can hear it. Let's see. Where are we? Let's just get straight to it. Strange news day today. And I'm going to get to that. First, change your life with Life Change Tea. Support yourself. Support the show. Support us. Support our sponsors. Life Change Tea. GetTheTea.com. Use the promo code Jimmy, Jimmy, either over the phone or online when you check out, and you'll get free shipping. There's a Fader Nut special on the homepage. It is the Tea and Bark special. So that combined with the free shipping, you're going to save about $20, man. And that is the way to go. And, of course, right before the show tonight, I did my olive leaf extract. I did my colostrum earlier in the day. Probably do it tonight right after the show, too, before I go to bed. And I did my moringa today, too, as well. And you know what I did? I kind of stepped out of the box today. I did a moringa capsule, and I did the drops. Love that moringa, man. Just good stuff. All right, and of course, Studio Dome and their TWS true wireless stereo system. 2 SBB2 speakers in a hard shell case, $129. Just go over to the website, click on the Studio Dome banner, use the promo code JCRTWS, get you 60% off of the normal price of $399. That's $129 all in, and of course, you get free shipping. Best deal on the net. Awareness Life Expo is coming up in 4 short weeks up in Sacramento, California at the Crowne Plaza Hotel. August 12th, 13th, and 14th. August 12th, we will be broadcasting from a very special VIP party on Friday, August 12th. You will want to be there for that. Tickets and information over at jimmychurchradio.com. Just go to the appearances section on the right, click on it, and it'll take you straight there. All right, let's get this show cracking. Today, Kevin Hart is 37. He's got his moments of greatness, doesn't he? Sylvester Stallone today is 70. Eva Green today is 36. You know Eva from Kingdom of Heaven, Casino Royale, The Golden Compass, Camelot, and also her new series, Penny Dreadful. Jeffrey Rush today is 65. Burt Ward is 71. He played Robin in the original Batman series. On this day in history, in 1957, John meets Paul for the first time. And I'm not talking about disciples. Oh, I kind of am, I guess. Had to do it. The occasion where they met was the annual Woolton Parish Church Garden Fete, a parade and outdoor fair at which John and his Quarrymen skiffle group played. McCartney watched and was impressed. Went up, introduced himself. I think he had a guitar with him, started playing some Gene Vincent, and the rest is history. Fader fact, in the 19th century, check this out. In the 19th century, streets, sidewalks, and buildings, everything of central Chicago were raised between 4 and 14 feet using jacks in order to build its sewage system. They raised the city. Seattle had something like that too as well. If I remember, man, I got to turn this thing down. Hold on for a second. Let me just bust out a flashlight. I'm going to do this in real time. You got to love live radio. Do you hear the difference? It doesn't sound like a hurricane in here. In Seattle, I remember the first time I went to Seattle, and somebody on the tour bus was, on the way up there, was going, man, have you heard about old Seattle? And I was like, what are you talking about? Man, old Seattle. Seattle is built on top of the old original city. And it had to do with, I believe, like the sewage system was screwed up. The toilets would back up. And they had to raise the city. And I think that there was a fire, too, as well. And, Seattle was made of wood, and it burnt down. And they built Seattle on top of old Seattle. So when you go down, what's it called, Pioneer Square in downtown Seattle? You go down there, you can take a tour, right? And which I've done a couple of times. And you just, you go and you pay, and then you walk down the street. You've got a tour guide. It's got a set of keys with him or her. And they just walk up to some door, unlock it, and you walk. It's like Planet of the Apes, man. It's trippy. You go down these stairs, and there it is. Everything's down there. Storefronts, sidewalks, and then you look up, and the sidewalks above you in Seattle have these glass panels in them, like plate glass that you walk over. Those were there to bring sunlight daylight into the city below, because they actually stayed open for a while. The storefronts stayed there as they built new Seattle above. It's trippy, man. If anybody doesn't know about it, check it out. Old Seattle. It's the real deal. All right. Let's move on from that. Tonight, Joshua P. Warren is going to be here. We're going to talk about laws of attraction, his latest research, and also this amazing video that he's got over on his website. Stay tuned. Joshua will be here in a few short minutes. Weird news day today because yesterday, well, a day after, which is today, a video captured a couple of white police officers pinning down a black man who was shot and killed by one of the officers outside of a convenience store in Baton Rouge, Louisiana. And now, as of today, the feds have stepped in and are investigating the case, as they should. The man that they shot, his name's Alton Sterling, 37. He's dead. And the United States Justice Department Civil Rights Division is leading an investigation into what happened. And the president of the NAACP's local branch is calling for the city's police chief and mayor to resign. Attorney General Loretta Lynch also today made it official that Hillary Clinton will not be charged for using a personal email server during her tenure as Secretary of State, removing the shadow over her 2016 bid, sort of. And I'm quoting here from Loretta Lynch. She says, late this afternoon, I met with FBI Director James Comey and career prosecutors and agents who conducted the investigation of Secretary Hillary Clinton's use of personal email system during her time as Secretary of State. She didn't say what she should have said, but she didn't say, was that all of this came less than 24 hours later. It seemed a little bit sudden to me, but she didn't. I find that bizarre, but also no mention of Alton. No mention of what went down in Baton Rouge. I don't understand this, and I'm a little bit confused as to how Washington and the AG is silent on this. And now I'm going to continue here because this video, which I have seen a few of them now, just like everybody has, I'm not passing judgment yet. I don't know exactly what happened, but the video itself is shocking. And I'm not sure what happened. Okay, well, I know that a man was killed and was killed by one of the police officers. They're not saying who. One of those police officers knows who shot Alton. But to not disclose who shot him at this point, I think is funky. And I don't want them to try to turn this into something funky, but I see it coming. That's number one. Number two, the concern over this email, and I know she's running for office and whatever, but that honestly, truly is nothing compared to what just happened in Baton Rouge. And the AG focusing today on this and meeting with Comey when she should be, and when the feds are investigating, looking at this and commenting on this. This email thing, whatever. If there's going to be no charges or whatever, who cares? Move on. Don't care. There's more important things going down right now in this country. Now, and I'm not fully focusing on Hillary and the AG because there's something funky there, and Bill and his meeting with Loretta. That's something funky. But there are politicians, and it's Washington. There's nothing to trust, and it's all funky. Right? Okay. But moving on. Today, Trump, and I watched this myself, just in morose strangeness. He was live on all of the networks today giving this long, rambling, and very strange speech at a rally in Cincinnati, Ohio, discussing everything but policy. To me, it was a somewhat bizarre thing to do with Newt, hanging on the side of the stage. And it's 12 days out from the RNC. And to me, he should have been a little bit more dignified. And instead, we heard about mosquitoes and golf and the Star and Twitter and his kids and CNN and the press and the media. but not one word on Alton Sterling. And here is an opportunity for everybody that's in play here. And I'm talking about the AG, Loretta Lynch. I'm talking about Hillary. I'm talking about Trump. And I'm talking about the media. And I'm talking about Washington. This country right now is in flux. And the trust or distrust or non-trust, whatever side of the fence you're on, of the man, is in play. It's clearly in play after everything that has gone down. Ferguson and St. Louis, Charleston, Boston, Baltimore. Crazy things going on around this country of ours. And here today, at a moment of, on the brink of not only the national conventions, that's the first thing, but this email server situation, it pales in comparison. And Trump wants to get up there and discuss mosquitoes and is dancing around the issues. There are real things in play right now in the United States that affect us all. And I don't understand that. And we need to start making decisions on what's going on. Us, the voters. And not bringing this forward is bizarre. It's like Bizarro World. Clearly, with every police department in the United States, every single one of them, you would have thought that situation that just happened in Baton Rouge wouldn't happen. But we're talking about a guy that was pinned on the ground by two officers and somehow gets shot? What is that about? And that needs to be front and center across this country. This needs to be discussed. And we have two people running for office right now for POTUS, for the Oval Office, and it's a non-issue. It forces me to step back and take pause where when you think that maybe these two would get their feet on the ground, and I'm talking directly at Hillary and Trump, to get their feet on the ground and start talking to us. It's shocking to me. And I don't know how it's going to play out. I don't know who's advising and how it's going to play out over the next couple of days. But this is an issue. Sure, ISIS is an issue. The Department of Defense is an issue. Taxes are an issue. Education is an issue. But, civilians dying in the street, being shot by the police is an issue. It's an issue. Things aren't supposed to be like this. There is a way. If he had a gun in his pocket, which the reports were that he did, all right, fine. There's two cops there. Disarm the dude. That's what you do. You got him pinned on the ground. You don't shoot him in the chest. Unbelievable. It's crazy. And I think it's just despicable that Trump would get up there today and not mention it. Because something tells me that he probably doesn't even know. Isn't that weird? He would rather talk about golf and CNN and the media instead of policy and issues. 12 days out of the RNC, and it's the same thing for Hillary. Very same thing, that this thing with the Attorney General and everything else is going to be front and center today. Shameful. This is a show about conspiracies. That's what this show is about, whether it's UFOs or lost civilizations and the paranormal and other things that just go on that we just question. Conspiracy is the new normal. And right now we've got something going on with us against the man. It's a battle in the streets, and it needs to be discussed. I don't understand. I really, really don't. And if I was in the media, well, I mean, it'd be the first thing that I would press Hillary on today. the AG. I would stop the AG and go, what the email server? Let's talk about Baton Rouge. The email server is important to you? What happened to Baton Rouge? Go to Trump. We want to talk about your golf course in Scotland. You really think we care about that? What happened to Baton Rouge? What are you going to do about that, sir? But the media won't deal with it. I just don't get it. And they let them do what they're going to do. It's unbelievable. It's unbelievable. All right. Also in the news today, speaking of conspiracies and whistleblowers, imprisoned whistleblower Chelsea Manning was taken to a hospital in Fort Leavenworth, Kansas, after reportedly attempting suicide in a maximum security penitentiary, where, as everybody knows, she's serving a 35-year sentence for leaking the Black Hawk video. Manning was transported to the hospital yesterday. By today, she was released and returned back to the United States disciplinary barracks. And none of Manning's lawyers or friends have received any information from Leavenworth. Reports are unsubstantiated, trying to get to the bottom of it, is that Manning tried to hang herself and was being monitored now after returning to the prison. Very interesting situation. Also today, some pretty big news. The United States Appeals Court today started to weigh a constitutional challenge on the warrantless government surveillance program. That's right. Brought on by an Oregon man who was found guilty of attempting to detonate a bomb back in 2010 during a Christmas tree lighting ceremony. You remember this entire event. The case before a 3-judge panel of the 9th District U.S. Circuit Court of Appeals is the first of its kind to consider whether a criminal defendant's constitutional privacy rights are violated under an NSA program that allows spying on Americans' international phone calls and internet communications. Now, what they're trying to bring into play here is the defendant is saying, hey, I was set up. I was coerced into this, and they tapped my phone lines, and they did this, and they did this all without a warrant. Now, that's what's in play. That's that part. But what's most interesting is if the NSA is going to get stopped from this. Is he guilty? Yeah, he did what he did. Was he set up? Was it entrapment? But you know what? If you, in a situation like that, and you think you're being coerced, you can get out of it completely by just picking up the phone and going, hey, I've got these terrorists that are trying to talk me into detonating a bomb. They may be in person. They may be federal agents. And then that's how you prove that you're not a bad guy. But if you get talked into it and you push the button and you attempt to, if you're coerced or not, then you're a willing participant at that point, especially a crime like that. But so that's that. That sits on the back burner. On the front burner is whether the NSA is going to be able to move forward. And all of this is going to get this discussed for the first time in a U.S. Circuit Court of Appeals. We'll see. Bad news out of, actually good news. This is kind of a good news, bad news story. About 500 Venezuelan women in search of food have broken through border controls and checkpoints separating the western state of Táchira from neighboring Colombia. Now, this is what happened. The 500 women, there's a bridge there. The 500 women stormed the bridge, went over into Colombia. The border control for both Venezuela and Colombia did not stop them. The women said that their families were going hungry because of the severe food shortages in Venezuela, and they were allowed to cross into Colombia and get some shopping done, and then come back and cross the bridge. And then when they crossed the bridge again, where the border controls were there, again, they stepped aside and allowed the women to cross. Hours later is when they crossed back into Venezuela, carrying all of these basic goods and foods. They were actually singing the Venezuelan national anthem. Crazy story. And apparently, as I was looking into this today, This same thing happened last month, which I was able to chase that story down, and but that was not released into the media. But it did happen last month, too, as well. And it looks like Colombia is now going to have some meetings tomorrow with their national government and attempt to relax the border restrictions and allow the citizens of Venezuela to cross in and get food. Crazy, crazy situation down there in Venezuela. Also, today, this is nuts. The United States and Georgia, not Georgia the state, Georgia the country, signed a security deal today designed to shore up the former Soviet republic's defenses against Russia as it waits to join NATO. United States Secretary of State John Kerry and Georgian Prime Minister Georgiy Kiriakashvili inked the agreement at a ceremony in Tbilisi just 2 days before the annual NATO summit in Warsaw. The agreement is strange compensation for tiny Georgia, which was promised a path to NATO membership back in 2008, 8 years ago. But they're still not a member of NATO. And honestly, there's no real prospect of joining the alliance. Little olive branch was thrown out there, and I'm wondering what Putin is going to do in response. So there you go. Tonight, Joshua P. Warren is here. We're going to be talking about when Joshua's on this show, one of the cool things is we can go in any direction, whether it is the paranormal or ufology and the strange goings-ons down in the Caribbean and Puerto Rico, and also his hometown of Asheville. There's a lot to get out of Joshua, and it's going to be great. So you just stay right there. When I come back, Joshua P. Warren. I'm your host, Jimmy Church. This is Fade to Black on the Game Changer Network and KGRA, The Planet. Email is jimmy@jimmychurchradio.com. You can follow me on Twitter right now at JChurchRadio. Use the hashtag F2B in real time. That's the sandbox in Twitter. Any questions for myself or Joshua during the show tonight? Hashtag F2BQ. I'm your host, Jimmy Church. I'll be right back with Joshua P. Warren.
You're listening to Jimmy Church, Fade to Black.
Fade to Black will now pause for alien identification.
The station that talks the net. KGRA Radio.
What's up, revolutionaries? It's me, Jimmy Church. Do you have an IRS or state tax issue? Well, I did, and I called national tax experts. My problems were fixed, done, fini, and man, I got to tell you, it was a relief. National Tax Experts are a recognized tax office that services clients in all 50 states. It doesn't matter where you live. Give them a call. I'm telling you, they take the time to understand each and every client's individual financial status as well as their financial goals. And that's exactly what you need, my brother, when you're taking on the evil three-letter. So, seriously, give them a call today at 1-877-909-5444. Again, 1-877-909-5444. Or go check out their website, www.nattaxexperts.com. That's NATTAXEXPERTS.com. Tell them Jimmy sent you.
Hi, folks. Ronnie here reminding you that June is Health Awareness Month, sponsored by Get the Tea getthetea.com. Many of you have heard our tea commercial, maybe visited the website, but haven't committed because, well, you just don't know. Skeptical. We understand. Just to remind you, our tea is not just tea. In fact, very little tea. Life Change Tea is a unique blend of 8 different herbs, removing intruders that attack your health. You brew our tea to make the concentrate, you add water, and put in the fridge. 2 8-ounce glasses a day, and life will be good. Visit us at getthetea.com. That's getthetea.com. And this month is lots of fun stuff with Health Awareness Month. You could be picked and receive your order absolutely free. You never know. Read the testimonies and try our products. Log on to getthetea.com. That's getthetea.com. And for great health tips, visit my YouTube channel at Health Matters Now, where you can learn about health tips and how products work on your body. Join me, getthetea.com.
9 out of 10 geneticists agree.
Fade to Black is not your father's radio show on the Game Changer Radio Network and KGRA, The Planet.
Hi, this is Chase Kletsky with Fate Magazine Radio, and you're listening to Jimmy Church and Fade to Black on the Game Changer Network and the KGRA digital broadcast station, where the Fader-Knots rock.
Hi, this is Rob Reiner from Anvil, and you're listening to JimmyChurchRadio.com.
What's up? I'm Chris. What up? This is Kyle Matthew, and you're listening to Jimmy Church Radio.
All right, welcome back. Fade to Black. I'm your host, Jimmy Church. Follow us on Twitter at JChurchRadio. You can also follow the one and only Joshua P. Warren at Joshua P. Warren. Simple enough. He is here. Want to remind everybody, tomorrow night, Fader Night. Open lines all night long. We'll have John Rappaport in here with his No More Fake Newsroom. But tonight, it's all about Joshua P. Warren. The P is there, everybody, to separate Joshua from all the other Joshua Warrens out there. There's a lot of impersonators. He had to get the P in there so we know we've got the real guy. He was born and raised in the mountains of Asheville, North Carolina. At the age of 13, he wrote and published his first book. Since then, he has published Haunted Asheville, How to Hunt Ghosts, and his 2015 bestseller, Use the Force, A Jedi's Guide to the Laws of Attraction. We're going to talk about that tonight. He has been on CNN, Fox, Popular Mechanics, Entertainment Weekly, Southern Living, Delta Sky, Fate, New Women, The New York Times, FHM, and Something About the Author, and made the cover of the science journal Electric Spacecraft. A winner of the University of North Carolina Thomas Wolfe Award for Fiction, he wrote columns for the Asheville Citizen Times from 1992 to 1995. His first novel, The Evil in Asheville, was released back in 2000. He has appeared on the National Geographic Channel, History Channel, Discovery Channel, Travel Channel, Sci-Fi, Animal Planet, TLC, and more networks than I have enough breath to pronounce. NPR, ABC, NBC, CBS. Shall I continue? Also, the Travel Channel series, Paranormal Paparazzi. I would like to welcome back our good friend, Joshua P. Warren. Good evening, Joshua.
Hey, good evening, Jimmy. Great to be with you.
What is the P for?
It's for Paul, Joshua Paul Warren. I share that with my father, who is Daniel Paul Warren.
I know I give you such a hard time about it, but it's just great, Joshua P. Warren. Yeah.
Well, it's funny because in my website address, I always point out when I say it on the air, I say there's no period after the P. I say it's Joshua P. Warren. There's no period after the P. And literally, sometimes I will walk down the street in some random town, and somebody will recognize me, and they will say as they walk by, there's no period after the P, right?
You know what? I'm serious. I wish you were here I should take a screenshot. In my notes, there's no period.
Great.
I'm not making that up. I can't do it. I can't do the period.
It's so strange. And I've even had people email me and say, well, why isn't there a period after the P? And I say, well, because it's a website address, and you don't need an extra dot in there. It could get confusing. So, but it's weird how that odd little thing is something that people sort of pick up on and remember. But hey, as long as they remember the website, then I'm happy as heck.
You know, right on. And during the break, I'm serious. I'm going to take a shot. I'm going to take a screenshot of the studio here so everybody can, call my bluff. But yeah, I can't do it. I have done it over the years. I put the period in there, and I've always gone back and deleted it. It's just what I do. So there you go. Hey, I wanted to ask you a question that I've probably never asked you over the years, but it's this. You have been the go-to guy with so many networks, documentaries, and TV series, and print media, television, news, and so forth on the paranormal and ufology and ghosts. Because of that, do you feel the pressure of that? I mean, do you feel the need to be smart and watch what you say?
What you mean in terms of like a politician being careful about
yes.
maneuvering through controversy? Is that what you?
Sure, that could be part of it. I mean, are you cautious, and do you feel the pressure of being that that go-to guy for this knowledge?
Well, it's funny. I used to. I mean, many years ago, especially right after I started publishing books and people started asking me about ghosts, I didn't want to come across as a lunatic. And so, I would always try to frame things as scientifically as possible, be very reserved about giving my opinion versus stating the facts and the data. But all that has changed now. I've talked about so much crazy stuff that fortunately nobody's consolidated all of it into one profile, or I would look like a total madman. But I'm so open-minded. I'm happy to talk about my beliefs and my belief in interdimensional beings, and that we have been visited, and in life after death. And so I don't really feel that kind of pressure anymore to sort of fit in. And mind you, now, I grew up in the mountains of Asheville, North Carolina, which is literally Billy Graham land.
Right.
That's where he lives. There is a church on every corner. And, I grew up through the period in like the 80s when they had the so-called satanic panic, when like any kid who was reading about dark stuff or weird stuff could be accused of being a devil worshiper. And I actually had people who accused me of all kinds of, dark practices just because I wrote scary short stories when I was a kid. And so I also had to deal with some of that growing up in the rural South. But the internet has so dramatically changed the open-mindedness of people around the world that, for better or for worse, in some cases, it's they're open to things that maybe they shouldn't be open to. But ultimately now, I feel very confident talking about whatever crazy things that may sort of spontaneously pop into my mind. As far as pressure, there is always pressure there to produce something that is thought-provoking, because there are a lot of people out there all, rattling their own cage and saying, hey, look at me, listen to me, I have something important to say. And so when they honor you by choosing you and giving you airtime, you want to live up to the expectation and have something that is substantial, that is somehow provocative, that will make people think on a deeper level. And so that pressure is good, however, because that always makes me strive to think about things more thoroughly, and to keep an eye on the latest technology, and to not only research what other people are doing, but to go into my own laboratory and do experiments, to get out in the field myself and try to have personal experiences so I can bring some personal expertise to these subjects.
It's interesting. So listening to that, which was compelling, smart, concise, right? Great answer. But in a nutshell, you're okay with being the lunatic guy, is what you're saying.
Oh, yeah, you have to if you're going to be in this field.
Right.
I mean, the field of the paranormal is based upon the idea that you are always going to be speculating on something that goes one step beyond what is known.
Right.
And so, like, for example, all these guys who are, say, cryptozoologists who are talking about Bigfoot all the time, well, those guys may be called totally nuts. However, if tomorrow somebody actually finds a Bigfoot, well, then suddenly all these biologists will step in. They will push those guys aside and say, now let the real scientists take over.
Right.
And those guys won't be relevant anymore. And so the moment the paranormal transitions into the normal, well, then you, as the person who was always pushing that boundary, are no longer going to be given, acknowledgement. And you have to accept that if you're going to be a part of this field, you're always going to push a little bit further into that realm that is going to be, by some measures, considered lunacy.
And what's interesting with that is, and you and I were talking earlier this week about what happened at Contact in the Desert. And I had said, I don't mind. I had to take that step into being the crazy guy, right? The one that everybody wants to say is crazy. And here, I saw what I saw. I don't care what people think. I can only relay what my eyeballs, saw. And I don't care. I'm going to take it. And that's the position that you have always been. And it was funny because when you and I were talking about that, you were just like, Jimmy, welcome to the party, man.
Yeah. Well, also, I've always been fond of saying in our past conversations that the longer you stick with this, again, I always use field in quotations because it's hard to really be an expert at something if nobody knows exactly what it is, and which is the irony, the paradox of being a paranormal researcher. But within this so-called field, if you stick with this long enough and you dig deep enough and you listen to enough perspectives and you look at a wide enough database, eventually you realize that all these things, ghosts, UFOs, cryptid, psychic phenomena, they are all connected on some level. And some people get very angry when I say that. I was talking to a prominent UFO researcher recently, and he said, "Oh, don't say that. You can't take UFOs and group them in with all that other crazy stuff." And I thought, it's like, listen to what you're saying. You are now becoming what you dislike in your critics. And so essentially, there is a connection, as Charles Fort said. You can measure a circle beginning anywhere. And once you start to look at that, it makes sense because we are all living within one universe. That's why we call it the universe. You start to eventually realize, okay, your ghost research will lead you to seeing a UFO. Stick with it. Your UFO research will lead you to seeing a ghost. There's an integral psychic component to all this because everything's being processed through the human nervous system. And no matter how hardcore you may be from a skeptical, reserved, scientific perspective, you have to realize that every scientific instrument out there was conceived by a human, created by a human, built by a human, calibrated by a human, used by a human, interpreted by a human. You cannot take the subjective human element out of this picture at all. And when you surrender to that fact, and you just start becoming open to what you're actually experiencing, and you're not just always so stressed over trying to explain it as it's happening, well, suddenly you'll start to see all kinds of amazing things, and you talk about it and share these experiences with others, and that's how we collectively grow toward a better understanding.
One of the things that I've always been curious about is, I'm going to actually make this a long question instead of a short one. We have gone through phases in ufology from the 1950s with, flying saucers and then cigar-shaped objects and then black triangles. And I would say that the last, 15 years or so, it's been this orb thing, right? These orbs. And now I've seen what I've seen, but let's put that to the side. A number of phone calls and emails and photographs that I have had over the last few years about orbs in any context, whether it is in night vision or whether it is in somebody's living room, something that is going down somebody's street out in front of their house at street level. I've had one witness after another commenting about this. Are they all connected? Is this something that is interdimensional? Is it probes, being sent from another solar system? What? And are they all connected? Because the eyewitness testimony now, which includes me and my wife now, and thousands of others that were out of contact in the desert, this is something that is real. What is going on?
Well, this is one of the most complex areas because, firstly, it reminds us of the problems we have with the very terminology that we use when trying to describe unusual things. Obviously, by dictionary definition, an orb is just something that has a roughly spherical shape. And there are lots of things that are both common and uncommon that have this spherical shape. A soap bubble has this shape because of surface tension, or say a planet has this sort of rough orb-like shape because of gravity, and so on. And now when you start sort of looking into these paranormal phenomena, and you take, we'll start with the ghostly stuff, because the word orb really, I think, first emerged associated with a lot of these balls of light that were popping up in so-called ghost photos. If you start looking at the orbs in ghost pictures, you have to consider that, the lens of a camera is circular, and it will often interpret something that is illuminated as a circular object just because it's being passed through the lens. So it's not necessarily a matter of what's there. It's a matter of how the camera is seeing it. And so, and then, of course, you compare this to the UFO field. When you have these balls of light that are zipping around, in some cases, they may look rather stiff, like that you're seeing an illuminated craft. In other cases, you have, say, the Brown Mountain area with the Brown Mountain lights, where, again, you have glowing balls of light, but they look maybe a little more gooey. They look like a plasma or something that's more organic, like ball lightning, perhaps, that's sort of bouncing around the surface of the Earth. So you have all these sort of complex things to categorize because there are lots of different things that can take on this appearance of an orb. So that said, I would say that foremost, orbs in terms of the spiritual dimension that people are delving into when they do ghost research actually do make sense if indeed a spirit is something that is capable of shape-shifting.
Right.
Because that is the most balanced shape that some type of an energy form can take. It's efficient, it's compact, and when you start thinking about it, you go, actually, the same goes for a craft. Why wouldn't a spacecraft also take on that same shape, especially if this craft is shifting around gravitational fields, and it needs to very fluidly be able to slip one field to whatever position in 360 degrees that's going to help it balance with its environment. And so you start to realize that we may actually be talking about things that are not really directly related to that extent, meaning the difference between, say, an extraterrestrial craft versus a disembodied spirit, but they both can appear in a very similar fashion. And it does make it difficult, and that's why it's tricky for people like ourselves to go in and try to figure out how do you take this orb and put it here and this orb and put it there. And that's part of the challenge that we have as researchers.
And I like the camera lens look at this, and I totally understand that. But what about when there's no camera in play, and it's something that you see with your own eyes, and I'm sure you've seen yourself with your own eyes? Then what are we dealing with?
Well, let's say, let me give you some personal examples. The most prominent orb-like anomaly that I have seen with my own two eyes was at Brown Mountain. And of course, we've talked about Brown Mountain, but just to refresh listeners who may not be so familiar, Brown Mountain is kind of a low-lying ridge. It's about 2.5 miles long in the Pisgah National Forest of western North Carolina. And for at least 100 years, based upon journalistic accounts, and possibly much longer than that, people have seen these multicolored balls of light floating on and around this ridge at night. It's been studied by scientists from around the world, and nobody is really certain what we're looking at here. And I was up there one night in 2001 with a couple of researchers, Brian Irish and Casey Fox. They don't mind me giving their names. And I was the first to notice that there was this huge ball of light that was as bright and distinct as you could ever ask for, that had appeared in the woods. This was probably about 9 o'clock at night, so it was dark. I couldn't tell exactly how far away it was, but from my point of view, it easily looked like it was 2 or 3 times the size of a basketball, but a nice white light that just rose steadily straight up into the sky. We videotaped it with 2 different cameras, and the thing just kept going and going until it disappeared. Now, you look at that, and I ask myself, was I seeing a UFO?
Right.
Well, yes, I certainly was. It was an unidentified flying object.
Right.
But, on the other hand, could that have been something spiritual? Now, at that point, I have to look at the behavior of the object, because I would imagine that something spiritual would not just completely ascend in a straight line just like that into the sky and disappear. I would imagine something spiritual might be more connected to the terra firma here that we're all sort of interacting on and around. And so therefore, I would say that was most likely some kind of either a UFO or a natural phenomenon that appears like a UFO and not something spiritual. Now, I deduce that based upon my experience observing how things behave and applying those standards to the behavior of the light. So that's what you have to do. Instead of just looking at the light itself, you have to look at the behavior of the light and compare it to other known behaviors and then come up with your best guess.
And then you have the historical record, like, the German woodcuts of the balls of light in the sky having, their battle in the sky. I think it was over Nuremberg, if I'm correct. And the balls of light that have been seen over crop circles. You have the evidence of ball lightning over the years, which oddly enough, it's been talked about in every culture, but still really hasn't been officially captured on film. Try to find ball lightning on a Google search, right? You would think that there would be tens of thousands of pictures. There are not. It's a difficult thing. So we have that, and then we have the other stuff that is seen in night vision and stuff that is seen high in the night sky. It's a very strange phenomenon. And also, I don't know if, I'm sure you've heard, but the different contactees that have said that E.T. arrived in their room in a ball of light and then stepped out of the ball of light and used that as maybe some kind of transport vehicle. It's weird to me that all of these descriptions are quite possibly the same thing.
Well, I'm joining you tonight from the Bermuda Triangle Research Center here in Puerto Rico, and I'll be here until August when I travel back to North Carolina. I'm doing an event there with George Norrie on August 27th. And here in Puerto Rico, one of the things that has perplexed me most is hearing witnesses talk about this experience they have with a ball of light. And what's funny is that it's one thing when you talk to a couple people and they tell you this, and you scratch your head and you try to think, figure out what they're talking about. And then when you drive 50 miles and you meet another couple of people who tell you about their own experience, knowing nothing about the first couple.
Right.
And they describe the same thing. Now you're going, whoa, something is really happening. Now I have about at least half a dozen, I'd say 6 or 7 different couples that I've talked to who have told me that here in Puerto Rico, over the past 10 years, they have had this scenario, which I'll describe in general because it's, again, pretty much the same for everybody. The couple wakes up in the middle of the night, and there is a ball of light. It's usually white or yellowish, and it's hovering at the foot of the bed. Now, of course, they are instantly petrified when they see this. They're very confused. And then a sound emanates from the ball of light. Now, to one of the individuals present, usually the woman, the sound coming from the ball sounds like a voice being played in fast-forward motion, which is, unintelligible.
Well done. Well done,
thank you.
by the way. Well done.
But to the other person, usually the man, instead, there is a very calm, articulate voice. And that voice is speaking, and it always says something to the effect of, I'm not going to hurt you. Don't be afraid. I have come here to let you know that something significant is going to happen on this island soon, but you will be okay. And then, poof, it's gone. And it kind of gives you cold chills when you think about what it must be like to wake up in the middle of the night and have that experience. Now, for those people, they have no doubt that what they were dealing with was a conscious being that appeared to them in this orb-like form. And really, when you start looking at the idea that some forms of consciousness exist in this shape, and then you start looking at these UFOs that we've seen fly around that look very similar but don't behave the same way, it makes you wonder about the future of technology. Are we going to reach a point where we learn that these divisions that we now have between the animate and inanimate, or the organic and material, are actually going to break down and everything's going to blend together into a technology that seamlessly meshes the two? So in other words, right now we have this sense that, well, I'm a human being, I'm organic, my dog is organic, but the table I'm sitting at here, the metal table, that's a totally different type of composition. But what happens if you grind up a human being and you look at them under a microscope? You find iron and tin and sulfur and, all these same components that we consider inorganic out there in space. And so I think it's a bit of an illusion that we separate ourselves as organic beings so much from technology. And it may be that if we're looking at these we'll call them ETs, as some advanced form of technology that's been around much, much longer than we have, what we're seeing is a technology that is merged with the organic and spiritual form. And that is why we have such difficulty telling the difference between the two.
That's very interesting. I want to take that a step further when we come back. And, of course, we need to talk about Puerto Rico and the video that is up on your website. Just got a tweet in, Joshua. It says, from Spiritual Warrior, it says 60% of Puerto Rico's inhabitants have seen orange orbs. I'm just one of many. There you go. This is Fade to Black. Our guest tonight, Joshua P. Warren. I'm your host, Jimmy Church. More with Joshua when we come back. Stay right there.
This is Fade to Black with Jimmy Church on the Game Changer Radio Network and KGRA, the Global Radio Alliance.
The station that talks the net. KGRA Radio.
Hello, I'm Katie, and you're listening to my main man, Jimmy Church, on jimmychurchradio.com.
Hi, this is Ray Hobbs here, repping the planet, and you're listening to my good friend, Jimmy Church, Fade to Black, on the Game Changer Network and the KGRA digital broadcast station. Foodforliberty.com sells high-quality, storable foods from New Manna. And right now, take advantage of our summer special. Purchase 2 family packs and we'll send you a Pro Pure Water Pitcher, a $70 value, free. This premium pitcher is ideal for use with just about any water source and removes more contaminants than other brands. And it comes with a filter that lasts up to 2 full years. Whether you need to be prepared in the event of an emergency, you're an outdoor sports enthusiast, New Manna is known for high-quality, great-tasting, GMO-free, super nutritious food with no chemical preservatives. And with a 25-year shelf life, you can't beat the feeling of being food secure when you need it most. Go to foodforliberty.com right now for great-tasting, high-quality, storable foods from New Manna. Buy 2 family packs and get the Pro Pure Water Pitcher free. It makes good sense to be prepared. Get it at foodforliberty.com.
Imagine no longer being tied down to your computer, but having the freedom to take live talk radio with you anywhere you go. TalkStream Live introduces our first ever iPhone application. The talk shows you follow now follow you, and your iPhone is now the fastest and easiest way to stay connected to the best talk radio on the internet. Let TalkStream Live transform the way you listen to radio. Listen to live talk shows 24 hours a day, 7 days a week. Mobile talk radio from TalkStream Live. Now available in the iTunes App Store.
This is Toby Kebbell. You're listening to JimmyChurchRadio.com. Don't hurt me, Jimmy. I'm only little.
Hey, I'm Adrian Grenier. And this is Ari Gold. We're the Honey Brothers. We're of the Honey Brothers. Hey, I'm Adrian Grenier. And I'm Ari Gold. We're the Honey Brothers. And you're listening to Jimmy Church. The Revolution.
What's up, Fadernauts? Studio Dome loves Fade to Black and the F2B audience so much that they have put together the ultimate stereo Bluetooth system. They've done it just for you. Man, check this out. The Studio Dome SBB2 stereo system is here. It's featuring 2 Studio Boombox 2 SBB2 wireless Bluetooth speakers, packed in its own custom hardshell case. This Studio Dome system features the very latest in stereo Bluetooth technology. The 2 full-range boomboxes are in true wireless stereo. You've got to hear this. It's amazing. It's just $129, and use the promo code JCRTWS, and you'll also get free shipping. It's simple. Just go to JimmyChurchRadio.com, click on the Studio Dome banner. Go Beckley Tepe.
This is Micah Hanks of the Gralien Report, and you're listening to Jimmy Church on Fade to Black, across the globe on the Game Changer Radio Network and the one and only KGRA Radio, The Planet.
All right, welcome back to Fade to Black. I am your also humble host, Jimmy Church. Tomorrow night's going to be open lines. John Rappaport will be here. Let's see. Friday night, Joshua's actually going to be over on Coast with George. And then Saturday and Sunday, I'll be hosting Coast to Coast all weekend. So the party will continue with Joshua and myself for the rest of the week. Man, no rest for the wicked, right, Joshua?
No kidding. But, hey, at least we are in demand.
Yeah, well, you know what? It's better than not. That's what I was saying. Now, for everybody, I've just posted the video over that Joshua's got posted on his website. It's up in Twitter. And so click on that, and we're going to talk about this video now. I want everybody to go and watch it. It's an interesting video. And it's one of those videos that, and especially after what happened to us up at CITD and the night vision thing, and I see a video like this, and it's just, I'm beyond trying to question. I just want to just try to, I question if it's real or whatever. I'm beyond that. I'm more into what the hell is going on, and we've got to look at the science of this, because that's an interesting video. So everybody get that ready to go. I've just retweeted it, and go and get it started. Where did you find this video?
You know, the interesting thing is, of course, this video does come from Puerto Rico, and about 2 years ago, some locals that I know started contacting me saying, Josh, listen, I got a brother who works at Homeland Security in Aguadilla, and they captured a UFO, but, you know, they're keeping it top secret. And I had a number of people tell me they had a friend or a relative, and I was trying, you know, to see this video. For the longest time, it wasn't available. Till finally somebody leaked it. And I don't know who leaked it. And all I know is one day it appeared on the internet, and I was just delighted about that. And ultimately, here is the background of the story. Now, my place here in Puerto Rico is in Boquerón, which is on the southwestern corner of the island. But if you drive about an hour north of here to the northwestern corner of the island, you have the town of Aguadilla. And that's where you have, again, a Homeland Security station. You also have an airport there called the Rafael Hernandez Airport. It's a commercial airport. I fly in and out of there all the time. And on April the 25th of 2013 at about 9:20 p.m.
Okay, before you continue, I'm looking at a map of Puerto Rico. So let's discuss this again. Okay, you're in Boquerón?
Yeah, Boquerón is in Cabo Rojo, and so if you...
And that's the southwest corner of the island.
That's right, because Puerto Rico looks kind of like a rectangle. And so the corner on the southwest there is Cabo Rojo, and Boquerón is kind of a dip there. There's a bay that goes in on the western side.
And that's where you are right now speaking to us.
That's correct.
Okay, and this video was shot where?
If you drive 1 hour north all the way to the top left-hand corner of the island, the northwestern corner, there's a town called Aguadilla.
See it, right above Pueblo.
Mm-hmm. Aguadilla.
Yep.
Yeah, and that is where this video was shot. So on, again, April 25th, about 9:20 p.m. local time, residents started noticing this pinkish to reddish light that was flying around the sky. Now, mind you, I personally have been getting many reports from residents about seeing these pinkish, reddish lights flying around. In fact, one guy I know who lives in Aguadilla actually went out with his iPhone one night and took a bunch of pictures. And he got some video of a red light flying around. It's not terribly valuable, unfortunately, because all you see is blackness with a red light, you know. So that's the problem sometimes when you get these nighttime videos. You can't tell perspective and all that because you just have blackness. But anyway, that night, they realized this reddish light was flying around a residential area, and it got close to the airport. At that point, it showed up on the camera of a U.S. Border Patrol. Actually, this was called, I want to make sure I have this correct. It's a U.S. Border Protection plane. And I've got my notes here. Again, I want to make sure that I have all these things, all these facts in order. Anyway, it's a border protection airplane called a DHC-8 turboprop, operated by the U.S. Customs and Border Protection, had an infrared/thermal camera that immediately started tracking this weird object. And you have, I'm going to say almost 4 minutes, I think, of video footage that they captured of this object. Now, this object, it appears kind of like a black shape because, again, you're looking at this at night through thermal imaging. And this weird black-shaped object actually kind of is sort of shape-shifting a little bit.
Yes, it is. 100%.
And it kind of, you mentioned when we talked off the air, it often has sort of a tumbling action, it looks like.
Yep.
And there is a group of scientists who, in the United States, did an incredible analysis of this. They're the Scientific Coalition for Ufology. This is a group of mainstream scientists from diverse backgrounds. They went through and they analyzed all the motion. And what we basically have here is this object flying up to 120 miles per hour. It's zooming all around the area, including the airport. As a matter of fact, they actually had to delay the departure of a commercial aircraft until they tried to figure out what this thing was, because it was not, of course, communicating with the tower. It didn't have a squawking transponder signal, nothing like that. It seemed to have appeared from the Atlantic. It starts zipping around. It showed up on radar as an unknown target. They think it might have been about 3 to 5 feet in length. And at one point, this thing actually dips into the Atlantic Ocean. And amazingly, as the camera tracks it, you can see this thing traveling just below the surface of the water at 95 miles per hour. It then exits the water, and when it comes out of the water, we now have 2 of these objects. It's almost like it went down into the water, picked up a buddy, and came back out. And now we have these 2 zooming around next to each other, behaving in the same way. And then finally, they go out to the Atlantic and appear to dip into the ocean again and vanish. Now, of course, there is nothing about these craft to indicate that they are aerodynamically sound. They should not be able to fly.
Right. Clearly, and I'm watching this as you speak about it. I mean, clearly, there's no wings, there's no props, there's no jet engines, there's no flames, there's no smoke. It looks like, and especially on the close-up, man, it looks like it looks like a probe. Looks like some kind. And then when it goes under the water here, which I'm looking at, it's hauling butt. I mean, it is just moving, and you can see it under the surface of the water. And it's okay. Continue. I'm sorry. I'm mesmerized, man. Now I've seen it exit out of the water. Now it goes back in. Wow, how many times does it go in and out? Looks like 2 or 3 times.
Yeah, it appears to go in and out about 2 or 3 times until finally at the end we're assuming goes down one last time. Either that or the thing just dematerializes. But it's one thing to watch the video. It's another thing to watch it with this information that I'm giving you, knowing this thing's going 120 miles per hour, knowing it's going 95 miles per hour through the water. It does not exhibit the characteristics of any known drone technology, certainly not a balloon, none of the common things. And keep this in mind as well. Right around the area where all this is happening, we have off the coast, just a few miles, what is called the Puerto Rico Trench. Now, that is the deepest point in the Atlantic Ocean. It is the second deepest point in the world. The Puerto Rico Trench is over 28,000 feet deep. So, in other words, you could take Mount Everest and put it down in the trench and almost completely cover it with water. That's how deep this trench is. And it's long been said that there are bases of some kind in and around this trench, not to mention all around this island, where these things, which of course are often called USOs, unidentified submerged objects, are seen traveling in and out of the water. So a UFO becomes a USO and vice versa. And I hope that everybody will also go again to my website, joshuapwarren.com, and look at some of the enhancements that I have on my website, where I actually went in and I tried to extract as much detail as I could. And you can see this presented in stills under the video. And if you click those stills, it will blow up into an enlarged version. And you can not only see the shape-shifting element, but you can also see how distinct the temperature zones sometimes become around the craft. So that is to say, in one of these images, the sort of center of this thing looks very, very dark, meaning that it's very hot. And on the exterior, it looks white. So we can estimate that its exterior, based upon the camera that was used, is approximately 79, 80 degrees Fahrenheit. But what's in the middle is certainly hotter than 107 degrees. We don't know how much hotter but that's all we can tell. But certainly there's a hot middle and a cooler area on the outside. And you'll also notice, Jimmy, when this thing goes into the water, it's not like there's some gigantic splash.
No, there's not. There's only that one little blip. And
Yeah.
I'm glad that that's there, because that shows you that it actually touched the water. But when it goes into the water, there's no splash.
Yeah. Oh, yeah. And this thing, it moves with such sort of effortlessness from air to water and back up that it almost seems like it's sort of parting the elements, so to speak, as it's sort of fluidly zipping around. And, you can look at this and you can say, wow, is this some kind of amazing craft? Or you can look at it and you can say, is this a life form? And this kind of goes back to what we were talking about before the break. There comes a point when we must open our mind to the possibility that there is no big difference between the two among certain advanced forms of life and technology.
Right.
They merge at some point.
Now, I want to make another point here. This is an observation that I had. Flagrant disregard to airport security. I mean, this thing flies right up the runway, past the hangars, you know what I mean? Dips down, right through secured airspace. Is being filmed by a military craft, right? A military security aircraft, surveillance aircraft. Doesn't care, flies right up, and then heads out to the ocean, and then takes a bath. It's like, it's bizarre. And then I want to go back and do some more analysis here, but there's one other interesting thing. The aircraft that is filming this, when they lose it, they're zipping the camera around trying to find it again. Yeah. And that's pretty interesting, because they completely lost it, and obviously they were trying to find it, and at that point it's gone. It's in the water.
Oh, yeah. And on my website, underneath these stills, there is a link to the report that these scientists put together. It's 162 pages. It's extremely thorough. And, when I started reading this thing, I was impressed by the amount of detail.
What did they say? What are some of the highlights?
Well, essentially, all that they could say from a scientific point of view is, we have this object that was 3 to 5 feet in length. It was traveling up to 120 miles per hour. It was going effortlessly 95 miles per hour through water. We know approximately what temperature it was, but it does not match up with any known thing that we've got. Therefore, this is an absolute complete anomaly, and it also should be taken very seriously, because if this thing was flying around a commercial airport, there could be some kind of a dangerous element there. I mean, you can see the airplanes on the runway right at one point when it's flying over. And like I say, I fly in and out of that airport all the time. I'd kind of like to know what these weird things are that are zipping around in the sky up there. And so it becomes a very practical question. It's one thing to get into this field of UFO research just because you're curious, or, you're a thrill seeker, or whatever. But it's a different matter when you look at this from the practical perspective of air safety. It reminds me of the UFO that was reported over the Chicago O'Hare Airport some years ago. That was, one of those things. Well, they eventually blew it off and said, well, this was probably a cloud, like a lenticular cloud. Well, there were tons of people who saw it, who were professionals, who said, there's no way that was a cloud. So, when these things are appearing over airports, is there a danger there? Well, who knows? But it does give us a reason to take this seriously.
There's a couple of points in the video where this thing shapeshift is used too often, but it obviously goes almost invisible when it's over land, and now also what I'm really confused about. I'm watching the video here; it completely goes gray. I mean, it goes from black to gray. It's changing shape. But anyway, it's how do I want to say this right? If it's a drone, let's just drones are everywhere today. This was shot, everybody, the 26th of April. I'm guessing from the footage here of 2013. And this object is 5 feet across, 3 to 5 feet across. It's substantial. It's big. And it doesn't have any shape that a drone would have, a quadcopter, which would be huge. It would be a huge drone. And then flying at these speeds. And then, of course, we're saving the best for last. The friggin' thing splits into two. And that when I saw that happen, it was just all bets are off. It obviously goes from 1 to 2. How do you explain that? And what did the report say about that?
Well, it didn't really have an explanation. I mean, this is baffling. I mean, it would be weird enough if we just had this thing zipping around in the sky. But it's not only in the sky, but it's going in and out of the water. And as if that weren't enough, as you said, it splits into two. Nobody can explain this. I mean, here I am, a guy who's been professionally studying this stuff for 25 years. I can't explain what we're looking at. I mean, it would be one thing if, Joe Bob next door shot this with his camcorder. Well, then you might be able to at least turn around and say, well, maybe this was a hoax or something like that. But this has been very well established as being authentic footage, and all the references are pointed out in the report. And so, therefore, you're talking about the most credible type of source coming from a U.S. Customs and Border Protection camera. And again, the fact that I'm here in Puerto Rico gave me the benefit of talking to locals who were telling me, oh my gosh, they caught something last night at Homeland Security. I mean, it was the gossip, the rumor was quickly out there. It just took a while before the footage got out. This is coming from one of the most credible sources. And therefore, this is probably one of the best pieces of actual UFO footage that has surfaced, and it makes things even more frustrating because we look at that, and this is even weirder than we thought UFOs were.
Right. And what about the airport? Are you going to go up there and talk to the folks up there? And is there a possibility to chase down the crew of the aircraft that did the filming?
Well, of course, this was Homeland Security that filmed this. It wasn't anybody who worked at the airport. Now, I did go to the airport and talk to airport employees, and airport employees just said, we have no idea, we know nothing about it. And of course, one thing you also have to keep in mind, though, is that people here in Puerto Rico are very sort of cautious about admitting to witnessing or being a part of anything strange or paranormal. And that goes back to the role that the United States has played in the history of Puerto Rico. I mean, in the 1950s, the United States was basically at war with Puerto Ricans. I mean, they were coming over here and dropping bombs on people who were protesting, and they have been doing experiments. The U.S. government's been doing experiments here, dropping bombs with depleted uranium and whatnot just right off the coast up until probably about 10 years ago. And there are secret bases all around this island. You've got spooks and men in black everywhere. And and of course, you have to also consider that Puerto Rico is it's just a territory. I mean, it's not a state. And so this kind of military experimentation can take place here without the same degree of accountability on the part of the military. And so people here are sort of skittish about getting involved. I mean, I think I talked to you not too long ago about a UFO crash site that I investigated here.
Right.
And afterward, I mean, residents were saying, look, there were guys who were popping up on our doorstep and saying, if you ever breathe a word of this, you are immediately going to prison, and we are going to throw away the key. And so they take that seriously. You know, it's one thing when you get some kind of an email or you get a nasty phone call, but when you have, you know, these G-men pop up on your doorstep and come in and say, listen to me, they take that seriously. So it's hard to get people to open up and tell you a lot of details. You never know, because they might look at me and they might think I'm another one of these government agents, you know. I'm an odd figure here in Puerto Rico. There aren't too many gringos like me who are down here doing this kind of research, and it's taken a long time for people to trust me to give me as much information as they have. But there are still a lot of people who are very skeptical about my presence here, and it's because of that kind of scenario. And so I've not myself been able to talk to somebody at Homeland Security who will take credit for shooting this, but the authors of the report claim that they were able to meet in person with a source at Homeland Security, but he remains anonymous.
Also, I think it needs to be pointed out here, this is, how many miles is this from Arecibo?
Oh, well, it's not too far.
It's not, is
I
it?
would say my guess would be something like maybe 25 miles.
Yeah.
If that far? Yeah.
Yeah, I'm looking at it on the map here, and if you really want to, I mean, honestly, it's in that area. That Arecibo is not quite central. I would say Arecibo is northwest, right?
Yes.
And of course, Aguadilla and Isabela, where the airport is northwest. And
yeah.
it's in very, very close proximity to the radar installation.
And you've got that trench just right off the coast there, just to the kind of the northwest side of the island.
Yeah, I'm looking at it.
And of course, that's the Marianas Trench has scarcely been explored, and the same goes for this trench. But you take what's happening in Puerto Rico, and this is just a miniature example of all the stuff that's happening around the so-called Bermuda Triangle. And as you know, I believe that the gravitational field of the Earth at this particular spot may have something to do with it. And that's because we have some of the lowest gravity right here on the entire planet. If you look at NASA gravity maps that highlight places of strong gravity in red and very low weak gravity in blue, the blue is so dark here you can hardly even see the island of Puerto Rico. And so this relationship between weak gravity and paranormal phenomena is something that I have been studying for a while, and I think there may be a correlation there. And there are other instances where you have alignments of activity, like, for example, around the 37th parallel, the 37th line of latitude that goes across the planet and almost bisects the United States, has a cluster of animal mutilations, UFO sightings, haunted spots, sacred Native American grounds. And so the triangle here is another one of those patterns which obviously reflects something about the makeup of the Earth or something about the gravitational field and its ability to accommodate these relationships with these beings. Maybe it's easier for them to fly their craft here, or maybe there is something that literally warps what we call the dimensional boundaries here, and it makes it easier for them to appear and sort of bounce back and forth in these areas where the gravity is weaker. These are all things I could talk about, all day long, but that's the kind of thing that I'm trying to sort of illustrate when we connect the dots in this area we call the Bermuda Triangle.
There you go. Also, we're going to take a break right here, but the 37th parallel, are you ready? I don't know if you know this. It goes straight through Göbekli Tepe. trip on that one, right? Okay, this is Fade to Black. Our guest tonight, where's my audio? Where'd my audio go? Where's my audio? Oh, jeez. It's called a mute button. This is Fade to Black. Our guest tonight, Joshua P. Warren. I'm your host, Jimmy Church, on the Game Changer Network and KGRA, The Planet. More with Joshua right after this short break. Stay with us.
Way out here, we listen to Jimmy Church.
You're listening to Fade to Black.
Always on the edge of the hottest alternative talk. Jimmy Church with Fade to Black. KGRARadio.com.
¿Qué tal, mis amigos? Yo soy Mario Carson, el tiburón, y los invito para que escuchen a mi buen amigo Jimmy Church Radio. ¡Claro que sí!
Poor water quality is a major health issue, and it's only getting worse. Municipalities can't keep up, standards have dropped, and pollutants are increasing. Where does it all end? It ends by keeping the pollutants outside of your home with HydroCare's advanced systems available at Wave Home Solutions. No less than the best purification materials and processes have been developed by HydroCare to provide you with healthy, clean water for drinking, cooking, and showering. HydroCare far surpasses the competition in removing chlorine, odors, iron, lead, chemicals, limescale, and much more. Don't settle for less when it comes to your water. We'll take care of the toughest water problems for you, whether it's from a city or well source. Satisfaction guaranteed. For more information, call 888-997-WAVE. That's 888-997-WAVE. Or go to bestwater123.com. That's bestwater123.com.
Wave Home Solutions for a healthy, comfortable home.
Did you ever turn to your radio for your favorite talk show to find that it's been preempted for this?
In the air to deep right center. Back goes Lewis to the wall, and it's out of here!
Or this?
And I'm ashamed of you, Hillary, for voting for it.
Do you have a favorite talk radio program that's not available in your city? Just go to TalkStreamLive.com for links to the best streaming talk radio shows. At TalkStream Live, you will find live talk shows 24 hours a day, 7 days a week. All your favorites are here. With such a large selection, you will also discover some new favorites. On the go and still want to listen? With a mobile smartphone, simply type TalkStream Live on your internet browser. Now you can take internet radio with you. You will also find hundreds of music, news, and sports streams. Best of all, the TalkStream Live directory is free and there's never a login required. Remember TalkStreamLive.com, the fastest route between you and your favorite talk radio show.
You are listening to Fade to Black with Jimmy Church on the Game Changer Network.
Oi, oi, I'm Reese Evans. You're listening to Jimmy Church. This is Revolution. The revolution will not be televised. The revolution is on radio. Ciao.
Welcome back to Fade to Black. I'm your host, Jimmy Church. Our guest tonight, the one and only Joshua P. Warren. No period. What a crazy video. I just watched that video, Joshua, like 3 times during the break and stopping and starting it. Pretty interesting. And really quick, I want to address some of this in Twitter. Mark Tarana over in Australia said, what's the size of the craft? Between 3 and 5 feet. So I want to get that in. Let's see. The question from Idea is, do you know if this probe is using passive or active lighting projected onto the object from the camera? Do you have any idea about that, Joshua?
No, I don't. It's possible that information is contained in the report, because there is a section that digs into how that camera functions that is on that particular Homeland Security plane. But I'm not sure. And also, regardless of what information we find, I'm sure that a lot of that kind of information cannot be also verified, because, you know, the Homeland Security, they try to keep all that stuff as secret as possible. Otherwise, it could be used against them by drug smugglers and whatnot.
Yeah, totally. And right on cue, as you mentioned, Men in Black being all over Puerto Rico, John tweeted, any Men in Black experiences in Puerto Rico? It was like right on cue. Have you had any direct MIB experiences in Puerto Rico?
Yes. And I have never had anybody come directly up to me and say, you need to stop doing this or that. But there have been at least 2 occasions on which I have been clearly targeted by very strange individuals, and that I felt confident were to figure out exactly what I was up to and how much that I know. One of those times is when I was conducting an expedition, and I actually had a small group of people, and we were investigating a cave, or actually it was a cavern, not far from Arecibo, and this very odd guy who was very clearly, well, he claimed he was with the Coast Guard, so he had that kind of military look, worked his way into the group and started asking a lot of questions. And one of the tip-offs was that he claimed that he knew nothing about the paranormal, knew nothing about UFOs and all that sort of thing, and he was a total novice. And then at one point, when I was not around, he asked one of the guests about the wow signal and started having this big, long, in-depth discussion about the wow signal. And I thought, that's not the kind of information that a novice would know. And then after that, it turns out that he was asking the group a lot of very detailed questions about me and the technology that I was using when I wasn't around. And he had a lot of very strange behaviors. On another occasion, I was at a restaurant. I was actually sitting at the bar, and there was a whole other bar there available, and this guy came in and he sat down right next to me, which is always weird when there's a whole other bar available.
Right.
And he seemed very out of place, and he started asking me a lot of questions regarding politics. And so, I don't want to get into all the nuances, but there are at least those 2 occasions where I feel confident these are people who, they weren't there to intimidate me in any way, but they wanted to know exactly what I knew.
And it's interesting how, I'm looking at, in Google satellite, I'm looking at Arecibo, right, just blowing it up and looking at it. And all I got to say is, dang. Man, that is just, how many times have you been there?
I've been there about 10 or 11 times, I guess.
Is it stupid? Is it amazing?
It's 1,000 feet in diameter. And it is amazing, but it wasn't quite as breathtaking as I thought it was going to be. I was hoping that moment when I looked down over the railing at it would just be like, whoa. And maybe my expectations were a little too high. So it didn't have as much of the wow factor as I was hoping for, but it's still pretty dadgum huge. So it's not a disappointment in any way. And I've been very fortunate that I've had a lot of opportunities to talk to the staff and find out a lot of interesting information about Arecibo at the observatory, because a lot of people are under the impression that the observatory is just a big passive dish and all it's doing is sitting there listening. Well, actually, and this is not conspiracy theory, you can look this up and see it's mainstream knowledge. This has been admitted. This is also an extension of the HARP project. And so when you look at the logo for the Arecibo Observatory, it says Observatory and Ionospheric Research Center. And that's because sometimes they actually turn the passive dish into an active dish, and they turn it into an ionospheric heater. And they actually will send an incredible amount of electrical power from this dish to various parts of the atmosphere. And I was talking to one of the staff members, and I said, when you do that, what happens if a bird flies over?
Right.
And she laughed and said he explodes. It just goes poof, and there's feathers everywhere. And she said that they joke about cooking their Thanksgiving dinner, on the tip of that thing. And so, and I was kind of surprised because a lot of animal rights lovers or activists would probably be horrified to hear that. But nonetheless, they are not only just using this thing to listen to these faint radio signals out there from space, but they are also turning it into a gigantic death ray occasionally. And so it makes sense that there is a whole culture of restrictions and regulations and sensitivity about that area and who can do what and what frequencies you can operate within. If you go near that thing, you have to turn off your cell phone. And ultimately, there are people I've talked to who live nearby who believe that they are being influenced mentally by the electronic fields that are produced by the dish. And so that may be because we hear about HAARP not only being able to produce effects on the weather or produce, say, graphics in the sky or death beams or whatever, but additionally to create these sort of subtle electromagnetic fields that are able to affect the way the brain functions.
It is pretty remote, but there are structures pretty close by. I would assume that that's all. I'm just looking at, I don't know, maybe some of these are houses, but I think those would all be government at some point, because the dish itself is about as remote as it can be on the island.
Yeah, it's in a big sinkhole, and to get there, it was surprising to me how rough and narrow some of the roads were. I mean, because if you go to the website, they have a visitor center, and it looks like you're just going to go to some big commercialized, kid-friendly place. And actually, it's a bit of an ordeal to get there. You drive and drive and drive on all these just twisting, turning, broken down back roads, and it's actually quite beautiful in certain places. But it's a big surprise when all of a sudden, you've arrived at this facility. So, there are residents that live. They're not probably within a few miles of the place,
right?
But the dish itself is quite remote. Yeah.
Now let's get to the book. Your latest is Use the Force: A Jedi's Guide to the Law of Attraction. First question, as we get into this, anything from the Star Wars camp and Lucas about using the names?
No, in fact, I did contact George Lucas when I was writing the book to see if I could interview him. But this was right after he had sold everything to Disney, and I think he'd just kind of thrown in the towel. And his spokespeople were very nice and said, he's just not doing any interviews right now. So I didn't get to interview him personally. But this is an unauthorized guide, meaning that I did not have to go to a board at Disney or Lucasfilm or anywhere else to get a stamp of approval. And really, though, when it comes to Star Wars, Star Wars at this point, it's been inducted into the National Film Registry in Washington, D.C., and it's really a part of the fabric of our culture at this point. So there's a lot of fair usage when it comes to the concept. And what I did was I used the Star Wars movies as sort of a reference point for all of these other philosophies, and I'm talking going back thousands of years, not just philosophy, but also looking at physics and metaphysics and theology. All of these different sort of concepts out there addressing the idea that there is some kind of a cohesive energy field which is distributed all around us that we can tap into and control. And so George Lucas himself claims that he based his telling of the Force on, I believe he said, 13,000 years worth of tradition. So he himself acknowledged that the Force is just sort of a commercial reference to this this idea that we are all connected, and this is an idea that obviously is being proven more and more as we advance with our technology and research.
Where did you where did you focus first to start to compile the ideas and the information?
Well, I was a kid of the 70s and 80s, and so I grew up with Star Wars. And the first thing I did, of course, is I wanted to see what George Lucas did have to say about the Force. And in his version, well, the Force is addressed as both a physical phenomenon and a psychological one. So I'll tell you what he said before I get into what I discovered. Of course, if we go to the movies, in the original Star Wars movie, the Force is referred to as an energy field that surrounds us and penetrates us and, binds the galaxy together. So it's a physical sort of reference. But then George Lucas has talked among his own staff about the psychological impact of balance in the Force, and essentially it being that if an individual feels separated from the environment, and this, by the way, ties in very nicely to what we were talking about earlier about this idea we have that we as individuals are separated from the rest of the universe, which is just an illusion.
Right.
That if a person starts to feel that way, that they're separate, well, then they become paranoid and they become selfish. And once you become selfish, you start accruing things. You start gathering things up for yourself. And once you have enough stuff for yourself, well, then you're afraid that somebody else is going to come and take that from you. And this fear that somebody's going to take it from you makes you angry. And that anger drives people away and leads to suffering. And so ultimately, the dark side of the Force is about selfishness, and the light side of the Force is about selflessness, and the idea of helping other people and realizing that you're all connected. And so that said, I started combining a lot of these concepts with this idea of the law of attraction, which we can get into in a minute. But the core of the physical prospect here is what I think of as a cymatic principle. Now, what that means is you can take something like a piece of cardboard and sprinkle a thin layer of sand over it and put that cardboard on top of an audio speaker. And when you play certain tones, that sand will snap into beautiful shapes and patterns. And the same thing happens with, say, a semi-liquid substance like cornstarch and water. It'll do that three-dimensionally. You can create forms that rise up and move around. And what this demonstrates for us is that physical matter adheres to an energy mold. And so if you are able to recognize the power that you have in your own mind, in your own consciousness, in order to create an energy mold that represents what you want to manifest, then if you do this properly, eventually the physical world will indeed rearrange or reshape itself in order to adhere to that energy mold that you create. And in doing so, you can actually influence the world around yourself in profound ways. And a lot of people have wondered, well, why did you write this book? You're a ghost guy. You're a UFO guy. And I've said, well, look, all these years I've studied ghosts and UFOs and psychic phenomena. What I've really been doing is exploring the relationship between matter and energy and the boundaries and limits of how far you can take that. So when somebody is talking about creating a tulpa, like some thought form, which could be, say, a ghost that is created because of enough people getting together and believing there's a ghost, or somebody who goes out and sees a UFO that looks a certain way because that's the way he or she is expecting to see it, and so on. You can take those same ideas that we sometimes manifest the paranormal, but you can apply that to all kinds of other things related to your finances or your wellness or your relationships and, very physical, tangible things that you want to manifest. And so I studied all these techniques. I tried them all out, and I took the techniques that actually work, and I broke them down very realistically, very practically, very simply in this book, Use the Force, A Jedi's Guide to the Law of Attraction. And if anybody reads this book and takes it seriously, and it's not very hard to do because the Star Wars movies give you a nice visual reference, I guarantee you, you can actually start changing very dramatically things in your life to improve your life.
What is the definition of law of attraction?
Well, the law of attraction in the simplest form is simply that like attracts like. But I think if we were to explore this from an engineer's point of view, it actually is what we would call sympathetic resonance. So what that means is if we have a big empty room and there are two identical pianos sitting in that room, and one man walks into that room, goes up to one piano and bangs a chord, well, that second piano is going to play that same chord, even though he never goes near it or touches it. You can actually demonstrate this with tuning forks, and I've done this many times, and you can go onto YouTube and watch people do this. If you take two tuning forks of the same key and you strike one tuning fork, well, the other one will also start to ring, even though you never go near it. And that's because whenever a signal is projected out there, it activates a corresponding signal that comes back in equal measure. It's sort of like for every action, there's an opposite but equal reaction.
Yeah, the resonance.
Yeah, it's a harmonic resonance, and this is a very real phenomenon that we use every single day in technology, in gadgets and machinery, and it's a part of life. It's a big part of broadcasting. As a matter of fact, this is really what broadcasting is all about.
That's right.
That an antenna can be used as a transmitter or a receiver, but there has to be a certain relationship between the two antennas for everything to work out okay. If one's too big compared to the other or vice versa, you're not going to match up. And so this applies to the human consciousness. And yet each person is a very unique individual. And so each person has to go through a process of figuring out what's going to work best for them. And in this book, I go through step by step. I use scenes from the Star Wars movies, and I say, okay, here's this next concept that we're going to get into, and it's kind of like this scene from the movie, just to help you out. If you're not into Star Wars, it's okay. You don't have to be into Star Wars. That's just going to be an asset for you. And then I say, here is the exercise. And what you find is a lot of people have experimented with law of attraction kind of stuff, and it does not work for them at all, and they think it's all a bunch of hooey. And the problem is, there is a lot of material out there that's frankly not very good. And if you actually do it properly, it works incredibly well. And what I have here is a step-by-step guide to show you how to do it properly.
Okay, so for the listeners out there, what would be a simple what's the word that I'm brain freezing right now? A simple step to practice this?
Okay. Well, over the years in my laboratory, I have done a lot of experiments with biofeedback. And so basically there are different types of devices, but they all work kind of the same way. You put different pads and sensors on a person, and you see if they are producing more or less voltage or current depending on the type of test. And what I find is that when somebody is happy, when you give them an ice cream cone or you say something nice, you say, I love you, well, suddenly they produce much more energy. They literally output more power. But if you show them, say, a horrible picture, something violent, or you say something negative and insulting to them, the opposite happens, actually. The field goes down and they become weaker. And so positive thinking literally makes you stronger. That's why when you see like Superman versus Clark Kent, Clark Kent's all droopy, he's got his head down, but Superman, he's upright and confident. And that's why you literally have this type of phrase, I'm going to hang my head in shame, or, he's an upstanding, upright individual. So the first thing that you really need to do, and this is easier than it sounds, is you want to make yourself as strong as possible by staying away from things that make you feel bad. Now, again, how simple does that sound? But you get people who say, oh, I can't do that. I hate my job, but I have to go to work. Or I hate my relative, but I have to go see him at Thanksgiving. And they come up with all these things they have to do. But the reality is, you are going to have to start by strengthening your field. There's a preparation phase. And staying away from things that make you feel bad is something that you should do incrementally. A lot of people in our country right now are weak, and they feel helpless and out of control because they watch the news too much.
Right.
And the news, as you know, is totally out of balance compared to reality.
Right.
The news is there to show you all the bad stuff that's happening. And so if that's all you watch, it gives you the wrong impression that there's more bad stuff happening than good stuff. The reality is 320 years ago, we were executing women and men in this country for being quote-unquote witches. 150 years ago, it was legal for us to own slaves. 100 years ago, women couldn't vote. Many black people could not vote until the 1960s. We are gradually getting much, much, much better as time goes on. So that's something to be really happy about. And so the news, however, only focuses on the bad stuff, and that's good to give us that kind of watchdog status. But you also have to realize if this is affecting you in a negative way and making you feel depressed, you need to tune out for a while. Okay, it's not helping you to do this, and you need to also take steps to get away from anything, any person, anything that is making you feel bad. You might not be able to do it all cold turkey, but you have to get serious about that. And I give you help and steps in the book on how you can do this. The second thing you need to do, and I'm by the way just giving you some information about how to prepare to use the Force. Because you can't just jump in and start doing this. You have to get ready. The next thing you need to do to get ready is to redefine the way that you feel about your relationship with the universe. So there's this great quote that's attributed to Albert Einstein, and he says something to the effect, the most important decision you can make is whether or not you live in a friendly or an unfriendly universe. And so when you start your day, if you wake up and you literally think and say out loud, I live in a friendly, loving, supportive universe that wants me to be happy and succeed, you might feel like the biggest fraud on the planet because you might think, well, I don't even believe that. It's okay. Even if you don't believe it, if you pretend that that's the case, if you use your imagination and you pretend that you live in a friendly, loving, supportive universe that wants you to be happy and wants to see you succeed, you will be absolutely astounded at how many good things will happen to you that day. And this is where it begins. We're starting to build a relationship between you and your universe. Who cares what's happening right now to this person in this place? Focus on yourself.
Right.
And once you establish a good relationship, and again, I give all the specific steps on how to do this, and I know it's not easy for a lot of people, but once you establish a positive relationship, once you start treating the universe as if it is a friendly place and wants you to be happy and succeed, it will begin to behave that way toward you. And once you have established that relationship, now we can start getting specific. And now we can start getting into what you need to do to manifest very particular things. I'm talking like, hey, if you want a certain car, if you want a certain mate, if you want a house on the cliff in Maine with the waves crashing, you can actually manifest all these things. And I know it sounds like, the scam of the century, but I'm living proof of this. And also, there is a lot of very tangible, practical data to support this, which we can dig into if you'd like.
Yeah, we're going to do that right after the break. And one of the things, and thank you for that, Joshua, when we come back, there's one thing that I do, and I talk about it on this show. I don't allow negative people in my life. And we'll talk about that when we come back. Joshua P. Warren is our guest. Stay with us.
Hi everybody, this is Rob Halford, the Metal Guard on JimmyChurchRadio.com.
KGRA Radio. Intelligent talk.
So, you love talk radio? Then you'll love TalkStreamLive.com. TalkStream Live is always on, 24/7 with the best streaming talk shows. Find your favorite talkers and discover some new ones. It's free, readily available online or on any smartphone or tablet. Finding your favorite talk shows all in one place has gotten a whole lot easier. Just go to TalkStreamLive.com. Be sure to download the free apps from Google Play or the iTunes App Store.
Are you tired of brown rust stains on your toilets, sinks, and clothes? Does your water smell and taste bad? Don't live with these problems anymore. Hydrocare's revolutionary well water systems, available at Wave Home Solutions, gives you clean, healthy, great-tasting water from every faucet. They remove iron, hydrogen sulfide, sediment, and many other contaminants that are distasteful and damaging your fixtures. You'll be amazed how fresh and clean well water can be. Satisfaction guaranteed. Go to bestwater123.com. That's bestwater123.com.
So, you love talk radio? Then you'll love TalkStreamLive.com. TalkStream Live is always on, 24/7 with the best streaming talk shows. Find your favorite talkers and discover some new ones. It's free, readily available online or on any smartphone or tablet. Finding your favorite talk shows all in one place has gotten a whole lot easier. Just go to TalkStreamLive.com. Be sure to download the free apps from Google Play or the iTunes App Store.
Hi, I'm Richard Dolan. When I'm not hosting my radio program, The Richard Dolan Show on KGRA, or writing new books on UFOs, I run a publishing company. I'm proud to say that Richard Dolan Press has published some of the most fascinating books available on UFOs and related subjects. They include Dr. Bruce Maccabee's classic analysis of the UFO cover-up, David Marler's breakthrough book on triangular UFOs, Dr. Richard Sauter's unique work on underground bases, and other classics by Grant Cameron, Chase Kletsky, and Dr. Bob Wood, not to mention intriguing works by Eve Lorgan and Laurie MacDonald that deal with truly bizarre phenomena. I'm proud to publish such high quality and original works, and there are several amazing books about to be released over the next few months. Go to richarddolanpress.com to learn more.
Did you know that when you're on the road with limited data or Wi-Fi available, you can still listen to every minute of Fade to Black by just calling 605-562-4482. No smartphone, app, or internet needed. It saves your data plan and no extra cost if you have unlimited minutes. Just call 605-562-4482. You can listen to me, Jimmy Church, on any phone, anytime, anywhere. Go Beckley Tappy.
You want to know a secret? I love ponies. I really love ponies. I'm serious. I couldn't stay sane without ponies to brush.
Why Fade to Black? Because you never got that pony, damn it.
This is Fade to Black with Jimmy Church on the Game Changer Radio Network and KGRA, the Global Radio Alliance.
All right, welcome back. Fade to Black. I'm your host, Jimmy Church. Tonight, Joshua P. Warren is with us. We're talking about his latest book, Use the Force, A Jedi's Guide to the law of attraction. And, I'm going to bring up a couple of points here, Joshua, that I find interesting, what you were just mentioning right before the break, which is about negativity, the news, positivity, and the difference. And I have always stressed, and this is just my own experiences and research, is that I find that negative people around me physically make me ill. They change me, and they pull me down, they pull me back. And and I started this like maybe 20, 25 years ago, if I had a friend that was negative around me, I just stopped calling them. I quit the communicate. I just slowly phased them out of my life, and I surrounded myself with positive, cool, funny people. And it changed my world for me. And then I found that the news would also physically make me ill. If I went out of town, disconnected from the internet, disconnected from the news, and forgot to watch TV for 4 days because I was busy out having fun, and then I'd come back to L.A., turn on the news, and I would immediately feel sick. And I was like, you know what? I just got to stop doing this. And you are absolutely right in making those points. Now, what does one do? Because I'll tell you what I do. If I have somebody negative around me at an office or in my life, and all they want to do is talk about negative things, I'll immediately counteract. I won't get sucked in and reply. I'll say, hey man, so and so over there just, I just hate that person, and I'll immediately say, man, I had so much fun last night. Went out with my buds and we did this and that. Man, all we did was laugh all night long, and just rub their nose in my happiness. You know what I mean? And I just won't. But what's the advice that you would give to somebody out there that all of this sounds good, but what about that one person that they have to work with and have to see every day that is just toxic? What do you do with that?
Well, Jimmy, I'm glad that you brought this up, because what you just described perfectly was the real life version of the old Jedi mind trick. And basically, it boils down to what the Hawaiian Huna philosophy states as energy flows where attention goes. And now if you think about that, energy flows where attention goes. That means, as you were saying, if somebody is trying to lead you down a certain path by the words, and it's usually the words that are coming from their mouth, and you don't want to go down that path, then it's up to you to shift the energy of the conversation where you want it to go. And this is a technique that a lot of politicians are very good at, as we all well know. And it works. It works for them in many cases. So that's one of the things that you want to do is start to, mitigate the directness of your relationship and your interaction with them. But I know that it's difficult for people to overcome the fear that if they change something in their lives that will take them away from some of these people that are influencing them or producing some kind of a negative field, they're afraid that if they make this change, they're going to lose something. Like if you're working with that guy who's being a jerk, and you don't want to quit your job because you're afraid you won't get hired anywhere else, that's a really, really terrible position for you to be in, because the more you project fear out there, then the more things are going to happen that make you even more fearful.
Right.
Okay, it becomes a self-fulfilling prophecy. It becomes a snowball effect. And so you really have – the worst thing you can do is have fear. And this applies to all areas of life. If you can overcome fear, and you just have to have a sense of surrender, that the universe wants you to be happy. And that's why that's such a very important aspect. And we're not just talking about a bunch of woo-woo, new agey stuff that's, easy for me to say. No, these are actual physical principles. I mean, like, for example, I have a section in this book that talks about the latest science, okay, the actual latest data that supports all these things that I'm telling you. And by the way, sometimes I talk about these very strange, exotic technologies like wishing machines and things that can help people with their manifestations. And there are folks out there who might say, well, come on, wishing machines have to be a bunch of baloney because you can't explain how they work. Well, gravity was around before Isaac Newton was born. But, it just took him finally coming there to explain it a little bit better. And I'm sure someday some of these mind-powered, machines and devices will be better explained. But if you want to get down to the, mainstream scientific studies that have come out recently, for one thing, since 1996, there have been at least 4 Nobel Prizes granted to people who have proven that quantum effects can actually take place on the macroscopic level. So in other words, that things that we once thought took place on such a tiny scale that they didn't apply directly to your experience or my experience, we now are finding they absolutely do happen right here within this realm that we're walking around and interacting in every single day. For one of my favorites is in 2010, at the University of California in Santa Barbara, physicists took a little metal paddle, as they called it, which was about the size of a human hair. That's what it looked like a little metal human hair. And they were able to place it in a quantum state of both moving and standing still at the same time. Now, you don't have to comprehend what that means, but the smartest people out there are saying, yep, we did it. This is a quantum effect, and we achieved it on a large scale. But if we go to 2014 at the University of Waterloo in Ontario, they achieved something which is truly mind-boggling to me. I'm assuming that most of your audience is probably aware of what is called non-locality or spooky action at a distance. Mm-hmm. It's the idea that 2 particles that are separated from each other have still some kind of a connection that we cannot explain. That regardless of the distance between these 2 particles, if you flip one of them, the other one will flip instantaneously. Okay, instantaneously. So that is to say, we just recently sent a probe up to Jupiter. And they say that Jupiter is so far away that we have to wait 48 minutes to get information back from the probe, because it takes that long for it to travel at 186,000 miles per second through outer space back to Earth. So you're talking about something traveling the speed of light, taking 48 minutes. However, 2 entangled particles are able to communicate instantly. And we don't understand how that works. But for the first time ever, at this physics lab at the University of Waterloo, they were able to create multi-party entanglement. Now, what that means is in the past, this had only been achieved between 2 points. They have now done it with 3 or more points. So if they have shown that this property exists within nature for multiple points to be entangled, well, then it certainly leads us to believe it is possible that all points in the universe are actually entangled. That whatever is happening inside your brain, all the little quantum particles, bouncing around, are directly connected to everything else that's happening in the universe. And that we are all part of one quantum homogeneous sort of consciousness here.
Connection.
That's expressing itself in different ways.
Yeah, connected is a very, very elegant word here.
Yeah. And so now this is just an example of what we're getting from the scientific community. Now imagine, by the way, it might be difficult for people to envision a day when humans have evolved enough in order to take this information and, shall we say, process it psychologically in order to influence the world around them. But think about how quickly this is going to be applied to, say, the internet, because this is the groundwork for the internet of tomorrow.
Right.
Right now, when we are using the internet, we're still having to rely on signals traveling through some kind of media, whether it's air or cables or fiber optics. But I guarantee you very soon, probably within our lifetimes, this is going to be turned into an internet system in which there is absolute instantaneous connection between the people on both ends without any disruption in between. And as this grows and expands more and more, we are going to see that this is going to illustrate for us how everything in life is actually working. It kind of reminds me about Elon Musk, making his controversial statements about the fact that we are living in a large simulation of some kind.
Right.
And that little by little we're discovering that, and as we discover it, then we model it, and that's what we're seeing happen with our computers and the internet. So ultimately, there's plenty of science, and I'm just giving you some examples to demonstrate that this is a real principle, that your mind can actually influence and manipulate your day-to-day reality in profound ways. We don't know what the limits are. There are some natural laws. I mean, I tell people when they get a wishing machine, for example, and they start doing experiments, you're not going to be able to fly like Superman. You're not going to live forever. There are certain natural laws, but we don't know what those boundaries and those limits are right now. And what we are finding, however, is that if you take this idea of manifestation and you apply it in some very basic ways, you can actually create these huge changes. But we live in a world that is designed to distract us. That is what advertising is all about. That's what the media is all about. It's all about saying, hey, buddy, you got a problem. Well, don't worry. Let me sell you this, and I'll fix it for you, right? And you can't blame the system. I mean, it is what it is. But you have to also be aware that that's what it is and not let it suck your soul up and distract you away from these simple things that you can do that I point out in this book that will help you regain your control and start to manifest things.
One of the things about that entanglement and connection that I find fascinating is, our knowledge and our technology right now, that's the bubble that we live in, right? And understanding what is beyond that, or, another race out there, some celestial being that is 1 billion years advanced, beyond us, would obviously understand quantum entanglement and things that travel faster than the speed of light. Gravity is faster than the speed of light. Einstein had said, that's it, speed of light is it. But no, there are things out there that are faster than that, and quantum entanglement and that type of non-localities prove things happen instantaneously, not at the speed of light, but instant at the same moment. So and the reason why I bring that up is when we're talking about our radio waves and our transmissions that are beaming off of Earth, and it would take 10,000 light years to reach whatever, right? And nobody has heard us here yet, and therefore we look at it the same, that we would not know that they are out there because it would take X amount of time for it to reach here. But when we get into the entanglement and connection issue at those levels, then communication would be instantaneous, like with Juno at Jupiter, right? But we don't have that technology, and we don't understand that. That would certainly answer a lot of different things for transportation, some type of a fuel system, or movement throughout the universe, it wouldn't necessarily mean a wormhole, right? Or traversing the universe that way. If it would be like a transporter in Star Trek. I hate to go with that analogy, but that's the understandings that we still need to get to. We don't understand that yet, and how this causality and these effects are real over vast distances, and they are instantaneous and now.
Oh, yeah. In fact, I would invite all of the listeners at some point to go to Wikipedia and look up the Fermi paradox, Fermi, the Fermi paradox. And basically, the Fermi paradox, it starts with this concept that we have all of this statistical analysis that says that ultimately there are billions and billions and billions of stars and planets. And therefore, if we look at how many should have a habitable zone and how many should be able to support life, et cetera, that we should have at least, like a gazillion different life forms out there. So the question is, well, where is everybody? And after you read that article, there is a whole section that goes down the list of possibilities. And so, for example, one possibility is that, well, since time is practically infinite, maybe that these other civilizations are just not matching up with each other. One it reaches a certain point and dies out before another civilization reaches that point and dies out. Another possibility is that maybe when a planet or a civilization reaches the point where they have enough technology to properly communicate with others in the universe, they inevitably destroy themselves. That just goes with the territory. You get that powerful, boom, you destroy yourself. Or another possibility is that the alien life forms out there are so incredibly different from us that we're kidding ourselves to think that we can even begin to communicate with. There are all these different lists of possibilities, but one of the things that's listed there is that maybe they are here, they're all around us, and either A, we don't realize it, or B, they're hiding from us.
Exactly. I totally agree with that. And yeah. I mean, look, if you, Joshua P. Warren, you jump on your starship and you take off to, another planet, distant galaxy, you find, and you land, the last thing that you are going to want is to be seen.
Yeah.
That's not, you're not going to want to be seen. You're certainly not coming back if you are. Right. And that's just, and it's the same thing if you're a time traveler. People ask, well, why aren't they here? Why aren't we? You know what? If somebody is here from the future, the last thing that could happen and would happen is to find out or to see. You wouldn't do that. And if you were a time traveler, you certainly wouldn't want to be seen in the future or in the past. That's just the way that it is. It's only because that is our frame of mind. That's why I don't think if E.T. was here, the last thing that he would want to do is be found and be caught. And we probably caught him, and that's why we haven't seen him either, because he's in an underground base somewhere in Australia. I don't know.
Well, two good points that I think we can tie in. Number one, you have all these silly people who contact me from time to time saying, oh, come on, if psychic power were real, why wouldn't somebody demonstrate it for Amazing Randy and take his $1 million? And the actual reasonable, practical answer is, if you've got psychic ability that is reliable enough to be tested by Amazing Randy's crew, then you're going to Vegas and you're going to make a lot more than $1 million, but you better keep it a secret, because once they find out you're the psychic guy, you get banned from the casino. I can tell you that very quickly. If you think that you can make more money going through scientific tests than you can hitting the casinos around the world with your ability, you're not thinking logically. And secondly, when people talk about some of these ideas, you mentioned you're giving away some David Icke tickets, for example.
Right.
People ask me from time to time, well, what do you think about David Icke and his concepts that there are shape-shifting reptilians there and they're feeding on us? And my response is, well, okay, if there are human beings out there controlling things that are actually shape-shifting predatory reptilians, then that would actually be the easiest secret in the world to keep, because nobody's going to believe it. And the reason that nobody is going to believe it is that there is not one single cow on planet Earth that knows people eat cows. And so why should we be so egocentric as to believe that we would know if there were an advanced life form here preying upon us? We have to face the fact that we don't know everything, and the joke could be on us.
Well, that's interesting, and I never thought of it that way. Of course cows don't know that. They wouldn't hang out with us. Right? Wow, that's heavy. That's about the heaviest thing that was said tonight. This has been an amazing conversation. That's really heavy. Well, and the odds of ET or somebody out there knowing that Earth is here is the odds are 100%. It's not 99. Why? It's a glowing, beautiful planet. It glows. We're covered with water. It's life. There's lights. You know, it stands out. And how can I say that? Well, that's what we're doing every single day. We're out there with Kepler and looking for exoplanets, and that's what we're doing with our little primitive gas-burning cars world, right? We're truly idiots here compared to the intelligence that is out there. But we're out there looking for exoplanets, and we find them. Now, they've been doing the same thing for millions of years throughout the universe. They've known about Earth, this beautiful blue orb orbiting the sun. They've known about it for millions or maybe a billion years. They know that we're here. And have they visited? You know that probe that you just posted the Homeland Security video of? We just sent a probe to Jupiter. How many have we sent to Mars and the Moon and Venus and Pluto and throughout the solar system? Pioneer and Voyager, right, that have left the solar system. That's what we do. And if that's what we do, that's what they are doing too. And they've been doing it a lot. And we've been visited a lot. That's just it. If we're doing it, so are they, and they've been doing it a lot longer than we have. I don't even think there's a point of debate here.
Oh, yeah, and of course it makes sense that we would always try to look at some kind of UFO and interpret it according to something that we can relate to. It's no different than the whole ancient alien idea that you read these stories in the Bible and somebody's describing some bizarre creature in the air or whatever, and you're thinking, well, maybe that would be how a person back then would describe seeing a UFO. Well, now you have these objects like the one in the Homeland Security video that don't look like any toy airplane I've ever played with. I mean, I think it doesn't have wings. It doesn't have a rotor. It doesn't have a power supply that would make any sense in this case. I mean, just think of what this could do for us on a power supply level if we knew what was propelling that thing the way it's traveling. And yet beyond that, it doesn't have a particular design or particular stiff fixed shape. We just can't wrap our minds around it. And it has, again, this almost kind of organic feeling. It really does. And yet we think, well, it must be some kind of machine because that's all that we can imagine traveling like that. But ultimately, it's time for us to open our minds and to realize that the future of humanity is merging those things. We are practically doing it already. I mean, I'm talking to you right now with the headset on, and that's one step there towards cyborg land. And where are we going to be in a million years? How morphed are we going to be into technology? And these beings, I think, are often so advanced we can't tell the difference between the two. And I hope that everybody listening will visit my website and click the little heading called Gallery of the Strange. And I have got a section there of UFO footage and pictures of ghosts, of cryptids, of psychic phenomena, you name it. There's one section called Down the Rabbit Hole.
I love it. Yes, I love it. I love it.
Just stuff that's just too weird, where I don't even know where it goes, right? And you'll see that that's where the truth lies for us, looking at the things that don't neatly fit anywhere. That is the true sort of land of discovery.
Can I get you to hang on for a little overtime, maybe 10 minutes?
Sure.
All right, let's take a quick break. Our guest tonight, Joshua P. Warren. I can't let him go. I've got a couple of more questions that I've got to get out there. He's the very best. I'm your host, Jimmy Church. More with Joshua P. Warren right after this short break. Stay with us.
To my boy, Jimmy Church, on JimmyChurchRadio.com.
Despite popular opinion, reading a book will not make you smarter.
But listening to Jimmy Church will.
Does your basement or crawl space have a damp, musty smell? Well, watch out. That's a sign of too much moisture and not enough ventilation. And that can mean increased mold growth and the buildup of harmful toxins and gases. Don't bother with a dehumidifier. It just circulates the same unhealthy air. Now there's a better way to remove these dangers and odors. It's with the computerized Wave Moisture Control Unit that reduces moisture and expels pollutants.
We replaced our old dehumidifier with the Wave unit, and in only 3 weeks, our basement is dry and the musty smell is gone.
Wave units require no maintenance, no buckets of water or filters, and costs only pennies a day to run. Breathe better, live healthier with an affordable, no-maintenance Wave unit. Call 888-618-WAVE, 888-618-WAVE, or visit mydryhome.com. mydryhome.com.
Ride the wave. Wave Home Solutions for a healthy, comfortable home.
What's up, Fadernauts? Studio Dome loves Fade to Black and the F2B audience so much that they have put together the ultimate stereo Bluetooth system. They've done it just for you. Man, check this out. The Studio Dome SBB2 stereo system is here. It's featuring 2 Studio Boombox 2 SBB2 wireless Bluetooth speakers, packed in its own custom hardshell case. This Studio Dome system features the very latest in stereo Bluetooth technology. The 2 full-range boomboxes are in true wireless stereo. You've got to hear this. It's amazing. It's just $129, and use the promo code JCRTWS, and you'll also get free shipping. It's simple. Just go to JimmyChurchRadio.com, click on the Studio Dome banner. Go Beckley Tepe.
This is Kristen, Erica, Brittany, Gabby, and you're listening to JimmyChurchRadio.com.
It's not a lifestyle we chose. We were born this way. KGRARadio.com.
This is KJCR at JimmyChurchRadio.com.
Welcome back to Fade to Black. I'm your host, Jimmy Church. I just talked Joshua into doing a little bit of overtime. And Joshua, talking about causality, we just got back from Roswell. And one of the conversations that we had at dinner one night, we had a group of folks there, and we were eating dinner. We were talking about just that. And I said, isn't it strange how, and I just pulled something out of the air, maybe you haven't seen a car accident in like 5 years, and you say to your friend, man, you know what? I haven't seen a car accident in a long time. And you're walking down the street, and all of a sudden, boom, right? There's a car accident. Is that an example of extreme coincidence, or is that the universe saying, hey, man, we're here?
Well, I think that this is an example of the absolute underestimated power of the subconscious mind in order to manifest things both good and bad if left uncontrolled and unrefined.
Right. I totally agree with that. I mean, we've all had the experience of, man, I haven't talked to Bob in 5 years, and the phone rings. And that's an obvious thing, but it happens all the time to the point where we're almost comfortable with that. But if you want an example of how powerful the mind can be, just stop and observe the causality that happens throughout your day if you focus on it.
If you talk to the most absolute, strict, atheistic, non-believing, materialistic scientist you can imagine, and you say, okay, tell me whether or not this is, strange, if this is something weird, if this is something paranormal, and you say the placebo effect, they go, because they hate the placebo effect, okay?
Right,
It doesn't make sense.
Right.
And you can say, well, hey, just sometimes stuff happens. Well, that kind of defies the idea behind science. There's a reason for everything, and we can't explain how sometimes people just heal themselves. That same scientist would have to admit that by his standards, the most paranormal thing in the universe is life itself. Because here we are looking all throughout this vast, infinite blackness, and we supposedly, according to the mainstream scientists, cannot find anything like this lush blue planet thriving with life that we live on. And so life itself is paranormal. And if we don't even understand why life is here, supposedly, and we certainly don't understand how the mind works.
Supposedly.
We don't understand where dreams come from.
Right.
We don't understand where memories are stored. Why should we discount any power that could be attributed to the mind and consciousness and the ability for us to change and manipulate things? I personally kind of feel like that we are here in school, that we're here to be trained, and that we're supposed to learn how to become responsible creators.
Do you have Orgonite in your house?
I do have some here, but Orgonite is a very interesting and often misunderstood topic that a lot of people mean different things when they use that term Orgonite. What do you mean when you ask me that question?
Well, I jumped into the Orgonite world about 2 or 3 years ago, and started to. Now I finally actually physically have some here in the house, and or over at the house, not in the bunker yet. That I haven't gone to that step. And the reason why I haven't introduced Orgonite here inside the bunker is, one, we're 3 stories underground, right? Number one. Number two, we have a lot of electronics in here. Very sensitive stuff. It's a very high-tech place. And introducing Orgonite into here could very well disrupt a system here that has been dialed in over the years. And I'm being very serious about that. But over at the house, I got a pyramid from a friend of mine, Gabriel, made it, sent it. And the second I took that out of the box and held it in my hand, it felt like I could feel it. I could feel it in my chest, my hands. I could feel the power of this. And it was something that I can't really explain. And so I know that there's something going on there. And I have heard different definitions and applications from many different people that have offered their technology to me. But none of the definitions are the same, and the uses are the same. That's why I was throwing it out to you. Do you have it at the house, and what's your experience with it?
Yeah, I have a lot of experience working with so-called Orgon, and this is going back, 15, 20 years easily. I started reading a lot of the works by Wilhelm Reich, of course.
Yep, of course.
And I became very interested in cloud busting.
Yes.
And in fact, I started experimenting with cloud busting to such an extent that I hate to admit it, but I got so in depth that I believe I created a massive, devastating flood accidentally one day.
I believe it. I'm with you.
It was a learning experience, yeah. But I proved, I needed to see this to prove something. I used to have very elaborate cloud busting rigs, and they worked every time. As a matter of fact, I will tell you right now, if there's anybody listening to this program who's having a wedding or a birthday party or something like that, or a parade, and you just can't have it rain, I guarantee you, if I show up, I can make it not rain for you. Okay, I used to track all the weather patterns and get data to actually prove this, but point I'm getting at here is when I would set up a cloud buster properly, and this involves taking a certain combination of things and putting them together, which essentially creates what's called an Orgon accumulator. When I would put the pipes up and let it run for a while, then frequently there would be this weird white powdery substance that would build up on parts of the pipes. And I would scrape this off and put it in a bag, and I collected a nice little bag of it, and I started sending it out for analysis, and nobody could figure out what the heck this was. And I still don't know what it is, but I believe that this is what Orgonite actually is. Now you have a lot of...
You should snort it.
Who knows?
Yeah, right.
I read the other day that the kids are snorting cocoa beans now, so whatever.
Yeah.
But I found that a lot of people, they will take just a combination of organic and inorganic materials. We'll say something like maybe they'll take some wood and some aluminum foil. Or maybe they'll take a resin or an epoxy, and they'll take little slivers of copper and stuff like that, and they'll mix them all together, and they'll kind of let it harden into a little thing that they call Orgonite. Mm-hmm. But I don't think that actually is Orgonite. I think those are little miniature Orgon accumulators. So essentially what they're doing is they're creating some type of a device that is designed to store up Orgon so it can then be released properly, and you usually release it properly by connecting a lead from it going into the earth or going to a stream of water or something like that. And by the way, for people listening to us who are like, what the heck are these guys talking about? Orgon? What is this stuff? Orgon is... It kind of smacks of the Force, actually. It is supposed to be a physical energy that is the energy of life itself. And it actually gets its name from the word orgasm. So basically, this goes back to the process of reproduction, that you are transferring life energy at that moment. That's literally where the name comes from. And so, not surprisingly, it was very controversial during its time, and probably still would be controversial in certain circles to discuss this kind of thing. But it's the idea that there is this intangible life energy, and the one thing that sort of connects with it best is moisture, because all living things contain a certain amount of moisture. Human beings are mainly water other than empty space. And so if you are composed of water, and a cloud is composed of water, and you have a conscious awareness, you should be able to communicate telepathically with that cloud, because you're both made of the same stuff, And if you are able to communicate with that cloud using these tools as a medium to help you, then you can determine and influence how those clouds behave and therefore alter the weather to a certain extent. And that's sort of the basis behind how that you can manipulate these energies by understanding the relationship between the human body, the creative life force, and moisture in the environment.
Yeah, it's so interesting. And just like you said, you caused that flood, right? And
yeah.
And there was something going on here. And science hasn't come in and done any elaborate, some kind of control testing and repeat and cause and effect. But I'm telling you, when I got this organite pyramid, with all of the different crystals and stuff and metals inside of it, it was like, man, it was like picking up, I don't know what Superman experiences, with kryptonite, but I'm telling you, I felt it. I literally felt it immediately. It was crazy, like it was battery powered. Now, before I let you go, the Mandela effect. Have you been? What do you think is going on?
You finally stumped me. That does not ring a bell. What is that?
Okay. The Mandela effect. Okay, so this is cool because I finally get to teach Joshua P. Warren something.
Yeah.
Wow, I feel like I planted a flag somewhere. Okay, the Mandela effect is it started in 2013. It obviously comes from Mandela in South Africa. That the memories were that Mandela had died in prison, had a big state funeral. His wife was on TV and crying, and the news was out there, and that was the memories. And as it turns out, he didn't die in prison. He was released from prison, divorced his wife, and so forth. But that's where the name comes from, the Mandela effect, that the past is not what we remember it specifically, and we can go back and pick out different events in our life or memories, TV shows, whatever, and go back, and things aren't what you remember them to be. And part of the theory behind the Mandela effect, there's a whole laundry list of examples that I can give you that would make you stop and wonder too as well. But that possibly time travel was applied, that somebody went back in time and changed something for whatever reason. And so when we go back and we try to look at that specific event or object or thought or memory, that it is different than we absolutely positively remember it as. Okay.
Okay.
Now I can give you an example. And I'm sure you're looking up Mandela effect as we talk.
No, I actually know exactly what you're talking about, but I've never heard it called that before.
Right. And I'll give you my trippy. I've got a few, but my one trippy thing with the Mandela effect was the original space shuttle disaster, right, in the mid 80s. Mm-hmm. And I know when it happened because I have told many people not only when it happened and how I went through it, which was I had a guy that lived with me. His name was Daryl, and I had to drive him to work. And I had to drive him to work, because if I didn't drive him to work, he wouldn't go to work, right? Okay, that was one. Number two, he didn't have a car. And he only lived with me for about 3 months. And I drove him, I got up in the morning, and I drive him to work, and I come home. It's like 8 o'clock in the morning, and I'm in my kitchen making coffee. I grab the remote to the TV. I turn on the TV. There's the space shuttle. It's counting down. It takes off. I'm making the coffee. I'll watch it, and I'll watch it blow up, right? That was in the beginning of 1985 when I met this guy, Daryl. And that's my memory. And I told everybody, man, that was crazy last week with the shuttle. I just got back with Daryl. I just took him to work and came home, turned on the TV. And it turns out that it didn't happen in 1985. And I'm going to look it up. I'm going to give you the date right now. The original one It was not 2003. What was the first one? Not Columbia.
Challenger?
Challenger. Let's go to Challenger. Shuttle. Oh, man. We're running out of time. Challenger. There it is. Okay, so I go and I look this up. It happened in January 28th, 1986. A full year after when Daryl lived with me in the beginning of 1985.
Yeah.
And I'm sitting here messing with my head going, there was no way it happened in 1986 because I know when this guy lived with me. I know. And it was before my band was put together and everything else that was happening in 1985. And I know this, but I'm looking at it right here. There it is, January 28th, 1986. And when I had heard about this in the Mandela effect, different people going, no, it happened in 1985. It was definitely in 1985. Then they find out, and I have told this story for years, way before the Mandela effect was even a subject. I'm talking about 20 years ago, and it's just like, where is my memory now? Did it not happen the way that I thought that it happened when I was taking Daryl to work and I came home and I turned on the TV? Is this all a dream? I don't know. It just doesn't make sense to me, Joshua, at all. It does. There is no way that these two events are a year apart. And my memory knows exactly when and where I was. And it turns out it was January 28th, 1986. It's some kind of psychological thing, and I don't know what is causing it.
Well, I wrote about this in some depth in one of my books called The Secret Wisdom of Kukulkan. And I know this as, instead of the Mandela effect, I've heard it called the dead celebrities phenomenon. Because it's most often applied to someone swearing, I just heard that, Jack Palance was alive and I saw that he died a year ago. Jack Palance was one that this happened a lot with. Hervé Villachez, the guy who played Tattoo. There are certain celebrities that seem to, pop up in this phenomenon more often than not. But I think that's just an example because we pay attention to celebrities. Also, you have weird things like the Thunderbird photograph that was supposedly taken in Arizona in the late 1800s. Thousands of people saw it, but nobody can find it now. So this is something that I apply to a very odd and complex concept that I created called the paratemporal loop hypothesis. And the paratemporal loop hypothesis, it does involve time travel. And here's the crux of the hypothesis. The crux is based on the idea that if ever in the entire infinite future, somebody, not necessarily a human, but somebody is going to figure out how to travel back in time, then he or she or it will do it. Okay? And so that means if that's ever going to happen, then that individual has traveled back in time. But when we consider that it is therefore possible for one to do it, then that means eventually, maybe it's billions or trillions of years into the future, but eventually another civilization will also figure out how to do it. So we don't know just how many of these beings from the future are traveling back into the past. But we know that if they travel back to the past and they are able to actually interact with the past as opposed to simply observe it,
right,
then due to self-preservation, they are going to tweak certain things that are going to create a more abundant and plentiful and healthy lifestyle for themselves when they get back to the future. And so therefore we have these time loops that are created where one day one being comes back, tweaks things a little bit to his or her own standards, but that screws it up for somebody else. So they have to go back a little bit further and tweak things. And now the other guy's, he's ticked off. So this person now has to go back a little further, and you get loops within loops.
Right.
So that means that one day you might wake up and Bigfoot exists. And the next day you get up and Bigfoot doesn't exist anymore. And that's why it's so difficult to document some of these creatures. It's because they're literally popping in and out of existence as the timelines are tweaked. And it may be that there is some effort to police these activities, and that would be where the Men in Black come into play. And the Men in Black, to those of us who lived in the 20th century, are known to wear black because that is a very convenient outfit for them to slip back and forth within, say, like a 100-year period. If you have to wake up in the morning and do something in 1991, and then you have to go to 1952, and then you have to go to 1910, black hat, black suit, kind of blends in pretty well with a wide range of eras. And so you have certain outfits that appear on these strange figures throughout certain periods of history based upon what's going to be the most convenient for a policing time traveler to operate. And so I know we're almost out of time, but the secret wisdom of Kukulkan digs into it, and that's one that will definitely make your mind spin.
Yeah, that's very interesting, the time police concept. And also some of the eyewitness descriptions of the Men in Black about them not necessarily looking human. They were human-like, but there was something very different about them. And they, from the far distant future. And their job is to go back and forth and correct. That's interesting. Well done. Well played, Joshua. Well played. I'll share this with you. Many years ago, I was one of the two people who coined the phrase the Mandela effect during a conversation in Dragon Con's green room. We've been to Dragon Con. The other person was called Shadow, then a Dragon Con security manager. I have no idea which of us started using the phrase first. It started when Shadow mentioned that, like me, other people remembered Nelson Mandela's tragic death in a South African prison. Apparently, others in the green room shared that memory. So I researched it with my publisher's support, started this website for additional research, and I thought it was an interesting fringe topic and potential book topic for some spare time. And then it's turned into this, since then, it's just turned, it is strange, it is huge, and it's certainly worth your research and looking into it. I want to thank you so much, Joshua. And for everybody, JoshuaPWarren.com is the website. Just go to Jimmy Church Radio, click on Joshua's name. It'll take you straight there. And do go to his strange page of photographs and go to the rabbit hole. It will change your life. Thank you so much, Joshua. We've got 1 minute left. What are you doing now? What's in the future?
Well, I'm setting up a live webcam project here in Puerto Rico to analyze some UFO hotspots. And then I head to North Carolina, where, again, I'll be doing the big event with George Norrie on August the 27th. And you can go to my website for those details, JoshuaPWarren.com. Jimmy, let me tell you, my friend, I love our conversations. It's incredible the directions that we're able to go. And thank you so much for having me on your program again.
Yeah, thank you so much, Joshua. And then, of course, we'll see you Friday night over at Coast. And there you go. Behave. And when you head up to Asheville, say hi to Micah for us.
Will do. He'll be there at the event, as a matter of fact.
Yes, I know that he will. Be safe out there, Joshua.
All right.
Thank you so much.
Thank you, buddy.
Bye-bye. Joshua P. Warren, the absolute very best. www.joshuapwarren.com. And he's absolutely right. When he's on this show, we have the very best conversations. And thank you so much, Joshua, for coming in and hanging out with us. And with that, I'll say it one more time, JoshuaPWarren.com, because we ran to the very end. Thank you so much for doing that overtime with us. And I've got to run credits and get out of here. This show is produced by Executive producer Rita Kamarian. Shows produced by Hilton J. Paul, Mark D. Kovar, LJ3, Renee, Mark Dunbar, Jonas. Thank you, Dennis. Thank you, Bob. Announcers are Steve Harder, Gene Vito, and Mark D. Kovar. Fady by Dale. Webmaster is Drew the Geek. Music, Doug Aldrich. Intro, Spaceboy. Fade to Black is produced by KJCR for the Game Changer Network. Syndication, KGRA, The Planet. Thank you, Joshua P. Warren. This broadcast is owned and copyrighted 2016 by Fade to Black and the Game Changer Network. It cannot be rebroadcast, downloaded, copied, or used anywhere in the known universe without written permission from Fade to Black or the Game Changer Network. I'm your host, Jimmy Church. Follow me on Twitter at JChurchRadio. Everybody be safe. Go Beckley Teppy.